Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another 3 Point Weekly stream. And finally, we don't have to talk about Raptors trade rumors exclusively because we finally have a trade. The first major trade of this year. OG Anunoby is officially a New York Knick alongside Malachi Flynn and Precious Achiuwa, with the package to the Raptors, of course, being headlined by the hometown RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. But we'll get to that and much more. We got some MVP race to talk about. We got some contenders versus pretenders to talk about. But before we do get any further, do hit that like button, do subscribe, and we do have to start with that OG Anunoby trade because with two Raptors fans on the pod and the only notable trade so far to start the year still happening in late December, it's got to be talked about because we've been wanting any type of movement out of Toronto for a while now. And I'll let you start first, Gabe, as the Raptors fan. How do you feel about the Raptors finally making a move?
Ooh. Y'all know about the happy Raptor, man. Come
Yes,
on.
sir.
There's only one way to start this off, and it was to immediately get to the bit. Listen, I'm, for one, just very pleased that they made a move in general. But I think overall, from a Raptors fan perspective, it's a move that you can be very happy with. Like, you look on the Twitter machine and just see all the dialogue around it. Like, most people are saying pretty overwhelmingly that the Raptors won this trade. And I don't think it's necessarily as bad for the Knicks as a lot of people were making it out to be. But all in all, like, what this does for the Raptors, first of all, the point guard position where it was a year ago versus now is like, it feels almost night and day to me. Like, one, Dennis Schroeder was already playing very quality this season, but to bring in a player like Emmanuel Quickly, just the consistent shot making he has, the ability to just create his own shot, kind of work in between, his floater game. And he made a couple threes last night. That was really good to see. So just overall, having that at the point guard position, wonderful. Then you talk about RJ Barrett, who, while he might not have lived up to his fullest potential in New York, I think also has a lot of potential as a shot creator. And if he can just expand that outside shot and get a little bit more consistent out there, we know he can do it kind of somewhat. But if he could make that a little bit more consistent, I think that would only allow him to improve and grow and really, really be like, just his upside is basically what I'm saying. His upside is very high. I will say, because it's something that we're talking about, it's in the title. I think it means that Pascal Siakam is probably on the move soon. I think with a player like RJ and a player like Pascal together, I think it could get a little redundant, especially from the fact that you look at the roster from top to bottom. And from the spacing perspective, I think it's a lot of guys who are like okay spacers, but not necessarily great. Like Scotty, Pascal, even Gary Trent, for as good as he can be on some nights, he's still kind of streaky. Like, all these guys are like, they can make a shot some nights, but there's other nights that they can't. And it's just a lot of like mediocre spacers, is I guess how I would describe that. So I think if you can move off of Pascal and maybe something in that return besides like draft compensation or future pieces or whatever, you might want to look into somebody who can be a little bit more of a stretch forward, because I don't think they're exactly that hard to find in the current landscape of the NBA. Beyond that, I think the Knicks did pretty well as well. Like, I don't think it moves them up too high of a tier, but I do think it makes them better overall. I think OG might fit a little bit better, needing the ball a bit less than a player like RJ. And his ability to just space for them, kind of just let Brunson go to work, play great defense on the best wing on the other team, or just the best player in general, because he has a bit of versatility there. He provides a lot for them that I think will be valuable. And what most people aren't like pinning the Knicks as some title contender, this is a second round team who got better. And a lot of the top teams in the East outside of like Boston and Milwaukee have some weaknesses. So I still think they could be very competitive in that Eastern Conference. So, I mean, I'm pinning it as a win-win for both sides. I'm going to let you guys get to it so I don't take too much of the runtime, but I'm really a fan overall.
Go ahead, Dev. You can go ahead and talk your stuff about the Raptors, man.
Yeah, I was very happy with this trade. Just A, with the fact we actually finally made a move. I mean, we've been talking about the fact that the Raptors have needed to make a trade for what seems like a very long time now, and at least they've got the ball rolling. I did not expect this much back for OG, and quite frankly, I was happy that it was a little bit more player compensation than it was pick compensation. Now, the one thing this does indicate to me is that Ujiri, unsurprisingly, is much more going towards the retool direction as opposed to the rebuild direction. He doesn't want to have a 2022 win season anytime soon. He wants to at least remain in the conversation for the play-in, continue to be a competitive team. And this trade does that for them, assuming they don't completely flip the script with Siakam. RJ is going to come in and help you win games immediately as well quickly, but they still have room to grow. They still have room to improve and potentially raise your ceiling beyond what you are currently, which is a team that's just struggling to get into the play-in. I think the quickly addition, like you said, Gabe, is exactly what we needed at the point guard spot. It's better shooting and more spacing than you have with Schroeder, who has improved his three-point shooting throughout his career, but more of a playmaker, more of a guy getting downhill, good defensively, but quickly is that great three-point shooter. Weirdly enough, not that good from the corner, but very good on pull-ups, very good from above the break. He's like 41% above the break, but 30% from the corner. Those splits don't exist in the league. That's a weird oddity, but nonetheless, a great talent. RJ, we'll see what he can continue to do now in Toronto. Now that he's back home, he's in a new environment, a little bit less criticism against him as he's had in New York. So good move for them. I'm really happy with what I've seen. And as a big fan of Quickly's game, very happy to see him in a Raptors uniform. As far as the Knicks go, it's like you said, Gabe, it doesn't really jump them up a tier. I think the biggest thing in the short term is that their defense has fallen off a cliff since Mitchell Robinson has been ruled out for the year. They went from being a top 5, top 10 defense to a borderline bottom 5 defense over the last few weeks. So now that they're at the point now where they can bring in a guy like OG to help that defense, they still have some okay pieces there, especially within their depth guys with Josh Hart, with Dante. Hartenstein can still give them a bit of defense, but they really needed someone who could be that primary guy in the engine to their defense. OG can now be that guy on the wing, and that should help keep them afloat a little bit more. And then next year you have Mitch back. That defense has a little bit more potential to be on the borderline elite level. Probably still a move away, and I'm sure we'll have many discussions about that throughout the rest of the year, whether that's the Donovan Mitchell, whether that's someone else that they need. But it's a good move for the short term, and for the Raptors, it's a good start. Siakam, we'll see. His hesitancy to want to commit to an extension anywhere could make his trade decisions a difficult one. I don't know how much value there's going to be if he doesn't really say one way or another that he does want to re-sign anywhere, but it's a start, and it still seems like there is interest elsewhere for Siakam, which is a good thing.
I feel like we're all really on like the same page. I feel like the consensus on Twitter and stuff was the Knicks gave up a lot, and it might seem like that on face value, but I feel like it was a good package to trade for OG. And if you want to include Precious in that too, but mainly OG being the main piece coming back, because you got, like Gabe mentioned earlier, RJ he was always going to have that kind of expectation of hopefully one day you can be an all-star kind of guy. Like that was always going to be the expectation in New York, but now he gets to go to a situation where he can just flourish, be who he is, which is a guy that can do a lot of stuff on the court. He's not really great at one single thing, but can do a lot, right? You get OG, you know what OG is going to bring to the table. Really good wing defender, can shoot a three-point shot. He's what this team needs. Like you mentioned, Dev, like their defense has just been bad. When I saw that bottom 5 number, I was like, that was rough for a team that has Thibodeau as the head coach, was playing so well defensively when they were fully healthy. So hopefully that can help get them back towards like the middle of the pack, because they're going to need that to be that second round type of team that we've seen them be in the past, right? But trading quickly is tough, but the fact that we know he wants that big money, they're not going to be able to pay him. So at least you include him in something, you get something back in return, being OG, and you don't have to give up maybe like a pick or two. You give up that second round pick, which will be kind of high because it's the Pistons pick, but you still have all those first round picks, which, like we just all talked about, they're probably another trade away, and you have more picks, more assets for that potential trade down the line. But for the Raptors, this is an amazing move for them. We're just happy to see that they made something happen, right? Because we've been talking about OG this, OG that for like the last 2 years. Since we started this podcast, I feel like we talked about OG being traded like 10 different episodes, right? So glad it finally happened. I hope that means the writing's on the wall for a Pascal move, hopefully before the deadline. But man, getting Quickly, this is the guard that they need. Schroeder's been cool for them, but Quickly, younger, dynamic, can do a lot of different things. Last season, he started like 21 games. He averaged 22, 5, and 5 in those games. Really good splits. Great pull-up jump shooter. Floater game, nice. Defensively, I think he's underrated there. And then, like I mentioned, RJ can come in, be who he is as a player. I think he'll complement really well next to Scotty Barnes. And if this is a retooling, I like it because at least it's towards the direction of we're bringing in younger pieces, and we're not kind of stuck with these guys that are kind of on the cusp of that timeline. And now, hopefully, if a Pascal move is imminent, they can finally move more towards just the youth movement and start giving these guys some opportunity, like give Grady Dick some opportunity. Hopefully, Gary Trent can, bounce back a little bit because he's still a pretty young guy too. So I love this for Toronto. Like, this is about as good as it could have got considering how long they held on to OG.
Yeah, I am very interested in kind of how this affects a lot of people going forward as far as those opportunities because on one hand, looking at the other guys who went with OG to the Knicks, I'm not even sure if Malachi Flynn cracks the rotation. However, Precious Achiuwa with Mitchell Robinson's injury is probably going to get some rotational minutes there. And so I'm kind of interested to see what he does in that position and maybe if he helps with their defense at all. Not that he's going to be some Mitchell Robinson level player, but maybe he could be solid for them, do some good things, and really extend his career as well. Because I think he definitely had some quality times, but also, a lot of highs and lows in Toronto. On our side, it's I'm interested in Gary Trent as well because his production has definitely fallen a bit. And for some of the hype that he had upon coming to Toronto and even as good as he's played during certain stretches, I don't think he's been as great. So whether he'll even want to stick around or what his future is long term is definitely interesting, especially with us bringing in a player like RJ Barrett, who primarily is probably going to play shooting guard for us for the foreseeable future. Another thing, I did like his fit just watching stuff from last night. His fit with Scotty looked really good. And while Pascal individually had a good game last night, I think they should probably still look towards going into that new era. The trio of Quickly, Barrett, and Scotty feels like a really solid trio to just kind of move forward with. And even if that's not some crazy big three, that's a pretty solid team. And like you mentioned, the retooling just to kind of get into a new era, it feels like a different squad. And I still think Pascal has a lot of value. We see a lot of people forever thought that Masai crazy overvalued OG Anunoby. And now that we finally pulled the trigger on it, it's he really didn't. They got a really good return for him. So I think you'll probably end up seeing the same with Pascal Siakam once he ends up off this team, assuming it's in a trade capacity. And even if it did come to a free agency thing, there'd probably still be some kind of return anyways, just due to the sign and trade nature of things these days. So with all that said, I think if they can get the Pascal trade done earlier, it'll be better just to kind of let these guys flourish on their own and just let these new faces really shine. But even if they keep them to the end of the year, try to just develop them as much as possible because the team's not very good. They're not probably going to make the playoffs. So I'm just excited to see how they play together. And so far through one game, it looks fun.
Yeah, it does look fun. It looks like a much more balanced team, even though Siakam is still there. Even though you did trade away a shooter in OG, there's more ball handlers now, and there's an extra guy who can shoot just by the nature that you got two guys for one, essentially, in sending out OG. Obviously, like you mentioned, Precious and Malachi are gone, but Malachi wasn't hitting the rotation the moment that Dennis got moved to the bench, and evidently is going to stay there with Quickly being there. And like you mentioned, Achiuwa is my guy. He's been my guy, but frustrating moments with him at times for sure. He's shown flashes, but it's just not there with any level of consistency. So hopefully he finds that in New York as he enters the last year of his rookie deal. But I like the balance I'm seeing now. Of course, only one game, but Quickly just fits. It's what we needed a lot more of. He's probably the only guy in the team that I'd say you can consistently rely on who can actually create his own three-point shot. And we did not have that on the roster before that. I mean, RJ could try a little bit now too. You might get that on occasion from Siakam, on occasion from Scotty, but it's not ideal. So the fact that you get that now and Quickly at a very efficient rate, he's 40% on pull-ups this year, that's something that this roster desperately needed. Still some upside from a creation standpoint and a playmaking standpoint. We'll see what he can do now in the starting lineup as he gets those regular reps. Like you mentioned, Reek, he showed flashes of that last year in the 20-plus games he started, but he'll get a lot more run at that now this year. So I really like the fit there for New York. We'll just see what else is to come, just like there is in Toronto with the Siakam situation. And I question what teams might want to give without assurances of re-signing Siakam, but unless OG said something behind closed doors, we don't know that he hasn't given any assurances to New York yet either. So big pressure on New York to re-sign him if they haven't. But if they haven't, then good signs on what there could be in terms of a market for Siakam as well.
Maybe for OG, he would be definitely highly coveted on the market, I would think. But Pascal, I don't think he would be on the open market like as much. And he might not get – it depends on what he values, obviously, because somebody might throw that bag at him if they have the money available. But I don't know how many teams would really be that desperate to just sign him in free agency. So I feel like the best option for him would be to get traded somewhere and just buy in there, re-sign, because they'll probably pay him whatever they can to keep him there so he doesn't hit the open market. Because if you give up a bunch of assets to get an all-star guy like him, you're going to pay him whatever the hell you need to keep him on the team. So, I don't know why these guys are being so stingy about – maybe it's because they haven't hit free agency at this point in their careers. But I don't know. That kind of surprised me about Pascal being so reluctant to even commit to re-signing anywhere if he gets traded.
The only other thing I could think of is if he wants to go play with Nurse, because Philly will have the cap space. I don't know what their relationship's like. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but they're like the one good team that could sign him outright in free agency. That might make things a little bit more dicey.
Yeah,
I feel like he'd trade for him if they wanted to as well.
They could.
Probably. I think he'd have some good value though. For saying as much as his not re-signing kind of makes it weird, he's playing very well right now. I think it's just almost to the detriment of Scotty. I've mentioned it before where it's one of them seems to have a really good game, but the other seems to struggle. They can't have that great game at the same time. But he's playing he's top 5 at his position. I feel like power forward is one of those positions that doesn't have a ton of top level guys. And so for him to be able to be a premier talent at that position should inherently give him high value. If a team's trying to improve their power forward position, there's really not many better options out there than him, because you have those top untouchable guys like AD, Giannis. But beyond the first few guys, he's pretty much there on the same tier as a Lowry, Markkanen, I'd say, as guys who are very high level.
But if those are the two guys that are on the market, I want Lowry before I'm trading for Pascal. Even if you take contracts, I'm just thinking about pure fit on a team. Lowry, he's plug and play. Pascal, I don't think he's as plug and play as Lowry Markkanen can be.
That's why I want to get off of him. So, you have a great point. That's what I was saying earlier with, I hope they kind of go down the stretch 4 route, because RJ, while he can get out there sometimes, isn't necessarily known for spacing the floor. And Scotty, exact same thing. He can knock one down, but he's not exactly known for it. Jakob's on the floor. He's not I shouldn't say not a spacer at all, because he can sort of get not very far, we'll say. He can't go. He's not. I was going to say, he ain't going very far. But, yeah. So with all them on the court, it's you probably want a pretty knockdown guy out there besides Quickly. So that's why I would want a guy like Lowry instead for fit for my team. But I think there's a team out there that would probably really value a skill set like Siakam, because plenty of teams have guys that can just create a shot. But I think as far as a high-level main shot creator or a secondary shot creator, that's a pretty valuable role that he can fill in a lot of teams.
Let's talk about it, because there was 3 teams that were reported to be really interested in him, being Dallas, Indy, and of course Atlanta. We'll not talk about Atlanta, because that, to me, at least to me, that's just as lateral as it gets, and especially after getting Quickly, what would Toronto even want from that team? Nothing. Okay, so
the only thing they're getting is Jalen Johnson, and Atlanta seemingly don't want to get off of him, so that's just not happening.
Either way.
Yeah,
I hate that, man. So I think my first thought was Dallas makes a lot of sense. But then I thought, because of Gabe's point, I was on TikTok Live yesterday on the Halftime Hoops account. Somebody brought up Indy, and I'm like, yeah, they could use somebody in creating a half court, for themselves, because they don't really have that. Even as good as Tyrese is, he's more of that pick and roll creator. Pascal's somebody that you can kind of get the ball to at this point in his career and create offense. So Indy intrigues me a lot, and they're kind of a team that's on the cusp right now. We know that they're talented. They can score a lot of points, but how serious can we take them to, being a competitive team once it gets to later on in the season in the playoffs, right? And being an outright playoff team. Pascal can make it interesting. I think they have the players to give up. We know Buddy Hield was kind of being talked about. Maybe they could throw him, and maybe Jalen Smith, Obi Top. Like they got guys that they can definitely throw into a trade package to get Pascal Siakam. So Dallas makes a lot of sense to me, but Indy I think is the most intriguing option of those three teams that were listed.
Yeah, I think a Buddy Hield return sounds quite nice in a Pascal type move. Plus,
doesn't it?
I mean, if they can do a thing where Pascal goes to Indy and then we get like Buddy Hield for more of a short term thing, and then maybe a young player on top of that to kind of give us the best of both worlds there. Like they get their star, and both in a retool setting, we get better in the short term and have a guy who can continue to develop. Because if you say like it's just Buddy and a bunch of stuff that's not very important, then yeah, we get better in the short term. But as far as a 10-year projection of the Raptors in the Scotty Barnes era, how much is that exactly doing for you? I'm not sure. See, but yeah, Obi Toppin and Jalen Smith, that's some solid capital, especially if we're giving up a power forward and we just gave up Precious. We would need that front court depth. So I actually like that quite a bit.
I like the Obi return for real. I think there's something still there to be unlocked in this game. He's played with Quickly. He's played with Barrett. Obviously, Buddy would be great to help that spacing that you guys have struggles with. But and Jalen Smith, he's been playing pretty solid basketball since he got to Indy too. So I wouldn't hate that. That might be better than anything that Dallas can offer for real.
Yeah, Dallas. That's kind of been the hesitancy across Raptors Twitter is what can they offer, because they're probably not going to trade Lively, and that's obviously the package that any Raptors fan is most coveting. Of course, then that probably means Podol is out in another trade, so that's a whole other can of worms. But if Lively's not involved, then it's maybe Josh Green and then Omax, who first round pick this year, but you haven't seen anything from him at the NBA level yet, so you're not exactly sure what you're getting there. So it's not as great of an offer. Obviously, if you're still trading with Indy, the prime jewel would be Jarris Walker, but that might be a little bit of a reach to get him as much as he would be the ideal guy to get in the Siakam trade.
Is it? He's barely even getting in the rotation for Indiana, so I mean, they clearly don't value him as much as they should.
Maybe not right now, but they do have a lot of depth right there right now. I mean, as much as Obi hasn't been great this year, he's still been fine. You're not going to drop Jalen Smith for him right now because he's still been uber efficient. I mean, not quite as good as he was the first few weeks of the year, but still absurdly efficient. So they're in a tough spot. I mean, Isaiah Jackson's still great on the defensive end for the bit of minutes he plays. So they're in a bit of a weird spot where they don't really have to rush him in. So I think they'd still value him, especially if they don't really want Obi to be a long-term guy. Maybe Isaiah Jackson doesn't get a new contract. So they still got some options that they can figure out there. I mean, Jalen Smith's a guy that they maybe don't want long-term either. They're just kind of weighing their options right now, I think. So I don't think they're really in a position where they want to give up who they might think is their power forward of the future whilst getting a guy in Siakam who, good for a couple of years maybe, but not the long-term solution.
Pushing 32, so it's interesting. We just mentioned 6 guys from the 2020 draft class, like Smith, Obi, Quickly, Precious, Josh Green, all these guys from the 2020 class. It's funny, man, but I just hope the Pascal trade eventually happens this season, because that would tell me okay, Toronto is serious. They're actually serious about shifting, to a different direction, even if it's not the full reset, but it's something that is more exciting than let's bring back these 6 wing players and try and play basketball again and be a play-in type team. This actually brings a little more excitement. People want to watch. Scotty's resurgence this year has been good to watch, but now him alongside some guys that he can actually grow with and hopefully, become a really competitive team down the line. That's more exciting than just what they've been kind of rocking with.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what's coming up next for them. I'm keeping my eye on that Indiana trade because the Dallas package, I'm not liking anything besides Derek Lively and maybe Grant Williams for that spacing. But
You want to take Jaden Hardy, maybe?
not as a main piece.
He'd be like the secondary. I would feel like Tim Hardaway would have to be in there just for money.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
I don't know
just
if I
looking
can
at it
stand
now.
that.
I'm
Tim
just
Hardaway
looking
and a
at it
Raptor.
now. It's a Tim Hardaway needs to be in there, or if he's not, then Grant Williams will have to be in there, or Maxi Kleba. That's already assuming that Rashawn Holmes is involved in the trade, which is probably a given at this point.
And that's just a lot of bodies, man. They should be on the Lowry train. Let's go get Markkanen. Try everything in our power to go get him. But man,
Who, Dallas or
Dallas? Yeah, I feel like just because money wise, you probably have to give up a lot of future assets though. But
Lowry, Luka, and Kyrie is a nasty offense. I'm not gonna lie. That's something to look at for sure.
That would be a crazy offense.
I hope we can see RJ flourish though back in Canada. We might be able to see that Maple. Was he Maple Mamba or Maple Jordan? Wiggins is one,
he was Maple Mamba.
I think he was Maple Mamba. Yeah, and Wiggins was Maple Jordan. So I'm trying to see that guy come out.
You know, I just think it's good. Like we talked about earlier, like he's not going to have that heavy top 3 pick, all-star type expectation now. Now he can just be who he is, and he's somebody that does a lot of good things on the basketball court.
Is he Harrison Barnes?
I think he's Barnes. I think he's Wiggins type. Like, I think he's that kind of player, and that's fine. Not every top 3 pick is going to be an all-star guy. It happens. Otto Porter made a lot of money.
Tobias Harris?
Might be Tobias Harris, man.
Tobias Harris like better. I think RJ's better, right?
Right now,
I think I'd say Tobias this year.
Yeah, Tobias.
Tobias has reclaimed his borderline top 10 power forward ranking.
If you asked me a year ago, it's probably RJ. But
Tobias has been better this year.
So he was kind of bad last year, but he was like the 4th option. Now he's back to being like 3rd option kind of guy, and he's doing his thing. Yeah, I think RJ's just like that kind of like player, man. And that's somebody that can, put up like 16 to 18 points. Defends pretty good. Can do a little bit of playmaking. Like he does a lot. He just does a lot on the basketball court. He doesn't do many things like great, but he does a lot of good things. And that's there's not a lot of guys like across the league that do X, Y, and Z things pretty good. And he's somebody that every team needs glue guys. I was watching Dez's video earlier. He talked about Lou Dort being the ultimate glue guy. Lou Dort does a lot of good things. RJ does a lot of good things too, man. So every team needs somebody like that because not everybody has that, they can cap their ego like that to take that role and not be the star guy. But I think RJ, he'll embrace that, especially being back home.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. Just to wrap it up before we jump out of this is potential framework of a Mavs trade, at least financially. Grant Williams could also be Maxi Kleba, could also be Tim Hardaway to make the money work, but that's potential framework.
It's just
a lot of guys. Like it's a lot of like depth, but it's like.
But is it good? Is it good depth at the same time?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how many of them are like moving the needle at all.
Because let's be honest, they like Dwight Powell more than Rashawn Holmes, anyways.
Yeah.
Max doesn't really play. Jaden Hardy, kind of in and out the lineup.
I like Grant because I was saying earlier we should go towards like a stretch 4 type guy.
Yeah, for Toronto, but he hasn't been good since like the first 2 weeks of the season. He's been pretty bad recently.
Plus for Pascal, I'm like,
they're a team that could get in that mode. They could get in that mode where like they keep fluttering between like 3 and 6, and they might just be like, we need to get solidified and get back to being like, we need to make that move that can keep us in that upper echelon of the West.
Is Dallas making a midseason trade though? Because that went really like you're talking about giving up 5 guys for Pascal Siakam. Dallas last year gave up a bunch for Kyrie midseason and fell out of the playoffs because they got rid of all their depth.
That's true. That's also true.
So I feel like it makes it very likely that Dallas, like if they do that, it just feels like they just did not learn anything.
You would like to hope they somewhat learned their lesson, but I don't know. I don't know if they have yet. They haven't proven to me that they have, so I'm not
Might
Yeah,
get
that's
desperate
completely
again.
bought in on this front office right now. All I know is that they're willing to make moves. I don't know that they're willing to make good ones.
I know that Luka's carrying. Oh my God, he's having a great season. That's
He's
the
been
only reason why
great.
they have 6, regardless.
He's been great.
Luka is having a great season, man. Luka is having a great season. Let's go into it because we're going to talk about the MVP race. So let's talk about Luka because
MVP caliber.
man, he's been brilliant.
You know, I feel like he should be my MVP because Embiid's missed a lot of time. Dallas, even though they keep fluttering like between like 3 and 6, Luka's been so good, man. And like Gabe said, he's the reason why they're even at the spot where they are right now is because of how great he's been. And it's night in, night out. It doesn't stop. Like, he's just great. Embiid's been amazing. But man, Luka hasn't. I feel like Embiid's supporting cast has also been like playing really well, especially with Maxey. Even like when Kyrie's been playing, Kyrie hasn't been great. He's been cool. He hasn't been the Kyrie that we know though. But Luka game just continues to ascend to new levels, and you know he would probably. I think he would be my MVP right now if I had to split hairs, even as great as Embiid has been. But Luka's he's been on a different level too, man. He's been right there with them.
Yeah, this season, just looking at some of his statistics, like career high in points, career high in assists, career high in 3-point percentage by far. Like it's hard to think that he can keep getting better. As good as he's been,
He
forever
had a career year last season.
people are like, oh, like Luka, he's not even going to reach his prime till like 27. Like he's not even in his prime yet. And we're like, there's no way he can get this much better than 28, 8 and 8. And then he's like somehow does, and it's like, how does this even happen? And the fact that he not only like the volume, because on a career high volume over 10 attempts from 3 per game, it's like for him to go all the way up to being almost a 38% shooter, not just the volume, but like the quality of shots he's taking. You got to think like a lot of those are at least single contested. He's probably getting a double look at a lot of times just based off being Luka Doncic. It's crazy impressive stuff. The only thing that I think is like keeping Embiid in that number 1 spot is just every time he goes out there, it seems like it's some like an absurd, absolutely absurd stat line. And not that Luka's stat lines aren't great on their own, but Embiid will just. I think yesterday, what was it, like a 35-point triple double in like 3 quarters or something, and I feel like a week ago he had like a 50 piece or something. Like he's just doing crazy stuff, and he has that narrative too. Like he has the perfect mix of like the crazy stat lines he's dropping. Philly's a top 3 seed, which we know that's been broken a little bit with like Westbrook, Jokic's first one, and a couple other times. But traditionally, top 3 seed, Embiid has that. And then the narrative of that, they got off James Harden. He didn't want to be there anymore. People thought Philly was like in hell, including us. And he came out and is just playing so good. Now, Tyrese Maxey is a big part of that too. But just for narrative's sake, Embiid has been so dominant that they've still been able to remain that top 3 team in the East, despite James Harden leaving.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing is, like we've said, Luka has been playing like an MVP. There's no doubt about that. But are the Mavericks going to be good enough for him to actually be named that? Because, like you said, Gabe, we have seen it a little bit more over the last decade or so, but even still, if the Mavs, like as of today, when we're recording this, they're sitting in 7th, it's going to be tough for him to get the MVP when there's someone who's statistically arguably just as good and they're a top 3 seed. And Philly are probably going to remain that way, unless maybe the Knicks go on a crazy run with OG coming back. I mean, the Magic have slowed down a little bit. Are they going to keep pace with those top 3? Probably not. The Heat have been playing better, but are they going to catch them? Doubtful. Pacers, probably a step behind. Cavs, probably got too many injuries over the next little bit to really make up that ground. So they're in a much better spot than the Mavs are to get that seeding. And I was talking about it with Garrett and Chad not too long ago with even SGA compared to Luka, where Shea just gets the favorism in the media, whether it's deserved or not. And that's not helping his case either. And again, OKC, top 3 seed, current rankings, Shai's above Luka. So that record for the Mavs is going to be the biggest thing that holds him back. Performance-wise, undoubtedly deserves to be in the conversation and should be right up there with Embiid. I got Jokic in that conversation right now as well. He's had some stretches over the last month or so where he's slowed down a bit, but I still think he deserves to be in that conversation, and Denver being a top 3 seed is going to help him, but I think it's going to be tough for Luka unless the Mavs really have to switch. Hopefully Kyrie can stay healthy and Kyrie does play a little bit more like we've expected from Kyrie over the last few years. Then maybe that's enough for them to make that jump. But until then, I think he's just going to be close, but not quite there.
It's tough, man. It's tough. And yeah, it's just like a few days ago, they were like, I think 4 seed, and now they're back down to 7. It's just how tight the West is at this point in the year. But Shai's another good guy that you brought up. He just torched the Celtics tonight. And Boston has the best defensive backcourt in the league and still can't stop Shai from getting his 30 points. Like Shai's different level, man. He's another guy. Just keeps getting better. More playmaking getting better. Just his offense just continues to grow defensively. He's still, providing some solid stuff as they're becoming more of a competitive team. Somebody else that's in that mix. Jokic is always going to be there because Denver's going to be good. He's going to have the counting stats. I think Giannis might have a sneaky case if maybe Milwaukee can catch Boston. He's been quietly just really great. Like, as always, Giannis doing Giannis type things, but just quietly has been doing his thing. And that's even with, not every night Dame's being Dame, but Giannis has been Giannis every single night pretty much. So he's another guy that I don't want to say being looked over or forgotten about, but he's just in that mix because, he's going to have the numbers. Milwaukee's going to win a lot of games. And if they can catch Boston at the top of the East, which are not even that far behind, he could definitely have a little case too. And I know Garrett's in chat. He said the other day about De'Aaron, I know you chimed in too about it too, Dev. Like, De'Aaron has the numbers. Shaq's been playing some decent basketball. Just a little, slight dark horse. Like, somebody that should get a little more recognition than he does.
Should definitely be in the best of the rest conversation for sure. Like, understandable if people don't want to put him in that top 4, top 5 conversation, but when there's top 10 lists and De'Aaron's not there at all, he should probably be in that 6-7 range.
There's just so much top talent. Like, I think what's really giving these guys these top recognition right now is kind of that being just so far above the pack in terms of the winning. Like, Embiid, they're a good 3 games ahead of even Orlando now, so they're kind of separated from the pack. Same thing with Shai getting that recognition, Giannis, even Jokic. So they're about, I think, 2.5 games above the Clippers right now. So those teams who are kind of getting above the pack, when so many guys are just putting up this statistical dominance, I think for the last decade we kind of got away from the winning stuff because people were putting up these crazy statistics, like the Westbrook triple-double, like Jokic dang near averaging 1. A lot of things like that, or when Curry was so good the year the Warriors weren't really good and he came in second. But now when there's so many players across the league just putting up insane statistics, I think people probably will look at that winning a little bit more and say hey, yeah, both of these guys are almost averaging a 30-point triple-double, but this guy's doing it on a team who's top 3 seed, 50-plus wins, even 55-plus wins. And this other guy, their team might have won 44 games or 45 games. And I think that might – it's probably going to come a little bit more into play this year just because so many guys are excelling at such a high level.
It used to always be the basis too, like you said. Usually top 2 seed would be one of your guys would be in the running for MVP. Now that's not always the case.
I think that's why Shai is getting that media favoritism against Luka is because, not that it's a solo job. Chet's been amazing, J-Dub, Lou Dort, all of them down there, very talented. We know Mark Daigneault's I think he's a pretty heavy favorite for Coach of the Year excuse me, right now. But it's just the fact that OKC's so far ahead of the pack. I think they're even a good actually, they're probably pretty close to Denver. They played less games. I don't know what the actual game differential is between them right now, but we know them to be they're closer to being the 1 seed than to being the 4 seed right now. I know that for sure. So just them being so good, like Shea's probably going to get that recognition, especially their first year being this good and how improved they are. He's going to get that recognition versus Luka, who Dallas is a 7th seed. It feels like this is where they've been for years, just in the pack in the West. And it's like I mentioned earlier with like the Embiid agenda or the narrative about Harden leaving, like I feel like Luka really has no narrative per se to go into it, which is going to make it way harder for him. Shea has even like a player like Anthony Edwards has more of a narrative with Minnesota being the 1 seed than Luka does. Now Luka's been way better. Now Ant's not a serious contender for it because Gobert's that in that defense has been the main reason why they're so good. But from a pure like, Ant is the number 1 scoring option on the best team in basketball, like.
That's the case. Tatum has a much better case than a lot of these guys too.
That's what I'm saying. From having a narrative perspective, Luka has 0. That team is not any better than they've been for the past 4 years.
Which is interesting even still because that team is not any better because of Luka. It's Kyrie's been injured a lot of the year. A lot of their guys haven't shot well. A lot of the secondary guys haven't been that great. Like Green started poor. Grant's been poor since the start. Derek Jones Jr. has cooled off a lot since the first month. Like it's a lot of non-Luka issues. But for whatever reason, Luka doesn't get a narrative around him for that. But despite like Jokic the other year where guys are injured and he does get the narrative around that for him. So it's interesting how that's worked because despite Luka not always being a high seed, when things go against him, that never really benefits his narrative for whatever reason.
Yeah, so I feel like
Jokic was out there with like Campazzo and Austin Rivers getting a 6 seed though. Like,
I mean, Luka's had Dante Exum starting next to him for most of the last 2 weeks.
You know what? Touche.
Dante Exum, yeah. That's a great point, bro. Like Dante Exum is getting applauded for like averaging like 10 points over this like last 2-week stretch or something like that. Like, yeah, that's cool. That's great that you're back in the league, but damn, you're like Luka's second option right now. Like,
it's a problem.
He still went out and gave Book and KD 50 on Christmas.
Yeah, according to Basketball Reference right now, the MVP tracker has Luka at a 2.9% chance, and Embiid is at 42% chance. Luka's in 5th because second is Jokic at 25. Shea's at 14.6%, and Giannis has an 8.5% chance.
Interesting. B-ball reference tracker sucks, though. Like,
does it? Like, Jokic is always in that mix because he's so dominant, and Shea is, like, absolutely hooping on a team that's the second seed.
That 5 is pretty accurate, but then at, like, 7, they would probably have, like, Domantas Sabonis.
And Rudy's probably up there somewhere.
Yeah, Rudy's probably up there.
6 is Halliburton.
Derek White was top 10 like at one point on that track.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Halliburton is kind of crazy because he's put up some crazy stats, but Indiana's not all that great right now. Tatum, which I think is accurate, but then yes, Sabonis is up there, which I hate. That should be De'Aaron Fox. Tyrese Maxey at 9. He's been very good, but I don't think MVP good. And then Damian Lillard, who's like same thing. Like those are both clear second options. They shouldn't be in MVP talks.
That's just ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. I think that the NBA.com MVP ladder was just messed up too. That's the one that had like Sabonis on there, no De'Aaron. Like,
why is Sabonis on these MVP ladders, bro? I don't
advanced stats.
I know. I hate because people do the same thing for Embiid, like the whole like using people's like postseason failures against them in a regular season award. They're like, he won it if it was a playoff flop. Why is he still in contention for this award? And it's like, because playoff flops aren't factored in, but it is like, you just know, like,
De'Aaron is the best player in that
team. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I think the postseason showed us that De'Aaron is clearly a better player than Sabonis. So, like, I hate seeing Sabonis.
It's not even the playoffs. De'Aaron's averaging like 30 points a game.
I think last season it was a lot closer.
Yeah.
This last season was a lot closer. This season, De'Aaron is clearly the best player on that team.
And when De'Aaron was out, they were bad. We're winning games.
Yeah, like this year there is a 10-point per game gap, and there's no way you can tell me, like, as good as Sabonis is, dude is averaging 19 points, not a good 3-point shooter, and he's not a good defender. In what world is that an MVP candidate ever? They could be the 1 seed right now, and they could be undefeated. He's still not anywhere near that because it's De'Aaron, and that's just not enough production whatsoever. If Sabonis is like Gobert levels of defense, okay. But he's not. He's like slightly better than Nurkic levels of defense. It's not good enough.
You know how good you'd have to be defensively in today's game to be like in MVP conversations? I know Joakim Noah like 10 years ago was in the mix, but you know how good you'd have to be today to like your defense alone have you like top 5 in MVP?
It would have to be a special team too, because you wouldn't be able to have an offensive star on your team, and in which case you probably wouldn't be a 1 seed because today's game is too offensive. So you'd have to have a really unique circumstance for that.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, yeah, the Wolves have an offensive star, but I think they're like the 19th overall offense in the league.
Well, like
they're the 1 seed.
Cat, and since Cat started to heat up more, him and Ant aren't like on that crazy of different tiers.
I don't know, bro. I haven't watched a ton of Timberwolves recently, but just from following Justin on Twitter, dude, I see him like shitting on Cat all the time. Like he was doing that when my team. Like
he was doing that when Cat was fucking averaging like 26 a couple years ago. They were a playoff team. Like,
dude, I don't know. I keep seeing all the Cat hate on my timeline, and I'm like, dude, what is this?
I don't know. Timberwolves fans really hate that guy.
He's been fine. Like, inconsistent at times, sure, but like that's Cat. Like
who isn't? Who isn't at this point, man?
It's just what you're gonna get, you know. Like he's been fine. He's been fine.
Yeah, if you want to talk about inconsistency, we got to get into the Warriors because, good God,
we do got to get into the Warriors because
you know I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep saying it until this guy's either free from Steve Kerr or Steve Kerr recognizes or something happens, man. But why in the fucking world is Klay Thompson shooting like 1 for 13 and Moses Moody is getting DNPs, bro? Bro, like why? I don't get it, man. And today I see a quote where Steve Kerr was asked about it. And he's like, well, we have a lot of depth, which, okay, y'all have better players on the bench this year than you did last year. Okay, that's fine. The motherfucker brought up Corey Joseph's name. He was like, when I put Corey Joseph out there, even he plays good. Like, bro, it's 2024, man. Why are you even bringing up Corey Joseph? Why is Corey Joseph playing basketball over Moses Moody, bro? Like, why is this a fucking thing, man? Especially when Klay is as inconsistent as it gets. Klay has not been – he had like a week where he shot better, but still, he's inconsistent. He's not as good as he was. Not good enough to where if you have somebody sitting on your bench that's a more active defender, shoots just as well from the three-point line, and it just brings a better energy to the team than what Klay Thompson is bringing. Why is he not getting minutes and why is he getting DNPs? I don't understand. Like, I think the only reason Jonathan Kuminga is getting the opportunity is because Draymond Green doesn't know how to keep his hands to himself. So what, does Klay have to get suspended for Moses Moody to get consistent minutes on his team? Like, I don't get it, man. It's frustrating to me, and I don't even like the Warriors. Like, I like seeing them lose. It's refreshing because they've dominated the last 10 years. But man, like Steve Kerr's just shooting himself in the foot by not giving players that deserve minutes and just hanging on to these guys, Klay Thompson, Draymond, these guys that aren't as good as they were, because he just has no backbone and no guts to tell them to sit their ass down for a little bit. It's frustrating. I couldn't imagine being a Warriors fan this season because that really pisses me off. I just had a 2-minute tangent about it because Moses Moody deserves to be getting NBA minutes consistently, night in, night out. But that's all I got to say about that situation, man.
Man, that was wonderful. I think, dude, the best way to describe Klay Thompson, you know those conversations that happen all the time where it's like this player's like they're just relying on their like defensive reputation, but they don't actually play that great of defense anymore. Like, that's Clay, but on offense. If that makes sense.
Yes.
I feel like he's just living off reputation. Like, I feel like he has more nights where he's like 4 for 13 than he has where he's like 7 for 13. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's so many more bad games than good ones. Like, he's finishing in single digits all the time. And the team as a whole is just super streaky. Like, they would lose like 3 or 4 in a row. Then they just racked up like 5 in a row, but now they're back in like a 3-game loss streak. Like, very streaky team overall. A lot of that honestly goes with him. And like when you talk about the Steve Kerr backbone thing, like it's clear it's just these like I talk about it all the time, like the guys that have just been there with Steph since the beginning because he moved Wiggins to the bench. Like Wiggins was playing like trash and he benched him. Rightfully so. Like he deserved to get benched. He still isn't playing great. He's had a couple of solid games here and there, but yeah, he hasn't been good by any stretch. It's just those two guys who were there for the rings with Steph that he's like he won't budge. What I will say though is I was pretty harsh on Draymond to start the season and his actual like how good he was, but their defense when he was there was around like 114 like defensive rating, which was pretty middle of the pack, like 15th or so, 14th maybe even. And then without him, I think it's dropped all the way to like 118, which puts them close to bottom 5. They'd be at like 24th, right between like the Nets and Spurs. So as far as his impact on their defense, it's made them pretty significantly worse, dropped them almost like 10 spots. So he definitely has value, and him coming back should make them a bit better. Happy to see Trace Jackson Davis, Big Ten legend, get his time in the spotlight with Draymond out. So that's been a recent positive for them. But Clay, man, holy.
I feel like I'm harping on the guy too, but it's more so Steve Kerr because he just doesn't have the fucking balls to tell Clay to sit down and play guys that actually deserve minutes, man. Like it's just
it's a different issue.
It's annoying.
With the two of them, it's a different issue because Draymond's on-court play, obviously by the team defense overall, is very impactful. And we know he does stuff on the offensive side, playmaking-wise too. So, like with him, it's more like the off-court enabling, or I mean, I guess even on-court enabling, but you know what I mean, like non-basketball. And with Clay, it's like, yeah, you're playing like ass, dude. Sit down.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic because like, Clay, you still obviously want to get something out of him. You're still paying him big bucks. And he still has some nights. I mean, prior to the last few games where he really started to stink it up again, he had a 2-week stretch where he was shooting the ball pretty well. And he started the month poor. He was 1 of 8, then a 4 of 9, then a 1 of 8. And he went 8 of 12, 4 of 9, 5 of 10, 6 of 15, 4 of 10, 6 of 10. Like he had a stretch where it was like, okay, this is more like it. And then we get a 3 out of 10, a 2 out of 6, and a 1 out of 6. And if on those nights you start giving Moody some minutes, maybe he closes some games for you. If Clay doesn't have the hot hand and Moody does, that's fine. Even if Clay's still starting, you just need to play the hot hand and not just hand out Clay 28 plus minutes every night regardless. But what happened their last game against Dallas where he shoots 1 of 6, Moody gets a DNP. It just doesn't add up. So I don't mind Clay still being given something, but like we've just discussed, when he's not hitting his shots, his value is pretty limited these days. The defense is nowhere near what it was. Now, it's still Clay. Teams are still respecting him to some respect, so it's still a level of spacing. But, man, at some point, you just got to have the dude who's hitting some shots out there. So there needs to be more balance there. And like you guys mentioned, there's been more of a balance with Wiggins, with Podziemski getting minutes, with Kuminga getting minutes. There's even been a balance with Looney. Not that he's been bad this year, but you get Trace Jackson Davis coming in and starting now over the last little bit. So there's been some give there in playing the hot hand and playing the correct rotations. Clay, it just doesn't seem like there's been any give. So I don't need him to completely remove Clay even from the starting lineup if they feel the need. It's just a matter of play the hot hand because there's no value at this point in time in his career in letting Clay continue to jack up shots and continue to get 30 plus when Moody is just sitting on the bench. especially when he's shooting the ball well. It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. I didn't want to make it seem like bench Clay, like don't give him any run. But yeah, like dial it back a little bit, especially if he's having those nights. And you can just tell if Clay's going to have one of those nights because he's just chucking up bad shots. And they're not falling. So, okay, it's going to be one of those nights. Let's get Moses Moody in here who's going to provide at least some better defense than what Clay's providing at this point. That's really it, man. But Steve Kerr doesn't have the backbone to do so. I'm going to bring up – I think I brought up the same example a couple weeks ago, but 2012, the Celtics, Ray Allen was not as good as he was. Like, was declining as a shooter. Defensively, was not as good as he was. He just wasn't the same player that he was like when they were making it to the NBA Finals and stuff. So instead, they give Avery Bradley those minutes, and Avery Bradley was already shown to be an elite level defender, was shooting the ball better than Ray Allen was at that time, and it worked. Like you moved Ray Allen to the bench, but he accepted that role. Now, I'm not saying Clay needs to be moved to the bench like we said, but dial him back a little bit because obviously something's not clicking for him consistently. So maybe a shorter spurt of minutes would be good for him so he can find a little bit of a rhythm. If you can do it with Wiggins, I think you can do it with Klay Thompson. But Steve Kerr just I don't know. He just has too much attached to these guys, way too much attached. And that even goes back, like you said earlier, Gabe, Draymond's on-court play, he's been good. He's actually shot the three-point shot better than he has in the last 7-8 years. On pretty decent volume for him too. But Steve Kerr kind of enables all of the antics, the on-court stuff, saying, I didn't see the situation. I didn't see this, blah, blah, blah. Jordan Poole gets punched in the face. Draymond, we're not going to suspend you. Just going to smack you on the wrist, but because we got the ring ceremony. So we're not going to suspend you, but, don't punch your teammates in the face. Steve Kerr is a part of that, enabling Draymond too. And, it just runs a little bit deeper, man. I kind of see why I've always seen a lot of Warriors fans kind of complain about Steve Kerr, maybe for different ways, but these are the kind of stuff that I'm starting to see now break out. Is it seems like he's not interested in still trying to do what it takes to be a competitive championship level team. Even if this roster may not be built for it, I think he's holding them back a little bit by just having these connections, these just desires to keep, his guys happy instead of doing what it takes to win games and also give your young talent that's shown a lot of promise opportunities to flourish and take the next step.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys just about one stat that I just looked at regarding Clay. And this just tells me that this shot selection might be a bigger issue than I thought, because in terms of pure volume, Clay's averaging his lowest shot attempts per game since he became a full-time starter. He's right below 14, which is down over 4 from last year, and literally his lowest overall since his rookie year. He was pretty much sitting around 18, even as far back as 2019. Then when he came back, he was still there at 17.9, 18.1. This year down to that 13.9. Is his shot selection really just that bad? Because it seems like there's at least been some discussion and obviously action as far as taking some shots away from him. 4 shots, that's a pretty significant drop off in 1 year.
I mean, just sit down. Just sit down, watch a Warriors game, and just count on your hands how many bad shots you see Klay Thompson take.
That is a lot.
It's got to be all of them. Because for him to literally be losing 4 shot attempts but still have just as many bad shots.
I'll say about half. Half of them are bad shots.
Now, he's averaging a career low in 3-point percentage and I think field goal percentage. So this is the least efficient he's ever been. So that does tell me that the shot quality is definitely going down.
I mean, the thing is he's getting older. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be as good as you once were. And that doesn't mean he's a terrible shooter. You just are going from one of the best catch and shoot shooters of all time to maybe being a fine one. And that's fine. You just need to style it back a little bit. Just a little bit. If you improve your shot selection a bit, efficiency's probably going to be fine again. He's not some terrible shooter. He hasn't lost that overnight. But you're not quite what you once were. So just scale it back a little bit. He's still got a lot of value there, but he needs to learn what he's actually capable of still, which is probably one of the hardest parts of progressing as a player. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's something he is going to have to realize.
Telling you, man, Ray Allen career arc should be on the way for him. That's exactly what it should look like, man. Like it's probably around the same point in time too. Like what Clay's year 13, 14 now. He's been in the league quite some time. That's around the same point where Ray Allen starting to regress a little bit. And it's fine, like you said, it's fine. Like he's just not probably not top 5 shooter in the league. Like he's probably, you know, a little above league average if he dials it back some and doesn't take the 7 bad shots that he takes pretty much every game.
Yeah, he's in year 11 of playing, year 13 in the league since he missed 2 full years.
Take it with a grain of salt, but it's interesting. He was in the 8th percentile last year for 3-point shot quality per basketball index in the league last year. He's at 50th percentile this year. So in theory, he's shooting better shots. In theory.
Which is crazy. That's what I mean. It's like the eye test. Like you say, sit down and watch a Warriors game versus what the stats are actually telling you. Like the stats are saying his shot quality is better. He's taking 4 less shots per game, so he is sacrificing shots to other up-and-coming guys. But it still feels so bad. So why does it feel so bad? Is it just because they're not good? Is it because winning just seems to solve issues?
Maybe. But it's a lot of things. And I think what's also taken away from Clay is, which has been evident since he came back from the 2 major injuries, which is not really, I'm not harping on him for this either, but he just doesn't do anything else really good on the court anymore. Like, he can be good defensively in certain matchups, but he's not the, to put him on, the top guards in the league type of defender that he once was. And he can guard some good wing players too. Now he's more like he can guard certain wing guys, but if you put him on a guard, like we saw in that Kings series last year, Malik Monk was eating him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like it was crazy. De'Aaron was cooking him. Like those guys were cooking him, man. Like he's just not good in those matchups anymore. So it's like it makes it look bad when he's also shooting the worst he's ever shot in his NBA career. And he's not a good defender, but he's still getting 28, 30 minutes a game. And still taking bad shots, even if that stat just sounds like a lie. I'm gonna be honest. Like, nah. that stat just sounds like a lie, though. But
it is definitely a bit fishy. Another interesting outlier from this year, too. Like last year, he was 41% for everything from 3, whether it be corner, above the break, catch and shoot, pull up. Everything was about the same. This year, he's 37.8 or 37.7 from 3, catch and shoot, above the break and corner, but 46.9% on pull-ups, interestingly enough. It's very odd. The thing that you would think gets worse at this point in time in his career is the thing that's actually getting better statistically so far this year. It's very bizarre. It's a very bizarre scenario he's got himself in this year.
Pull-ups feel like lesser quality shots too. So for that to be like his bread and butter, that's really strange to say. Like his shot quality's gone up, but he's all of a sudden really good at
probably not taking as many pull-ups, I would assume.
I'd imagine the volume is pretty low. Yeah, I don't have a number for the volume, but I'd imagine it is quite low.
Either way, though, that's an interesting. He's a curious case this year. He was good last year. He shot the ball really well from 3 last season, at least. But regression is going to hit at some point. He's came off of two of the worst injuries you can have as a basketball player, 2 career-threatening injuries. He came back off of those, played well, but this might just be who Clay is at this point in his career, man.
That team is saying guard nothing right now. I really think that's their biggest issue overall. You can say they're still middle of the pack as far as shooting percentages. Now their attempts are still up there, especially from 3. They're literally top 5 in 3-point attempts. They're taking a lot of them, but I don't the biggest issue is definitely that defense right now. The fact that it's dropped to almost bottom 5 status without Draymond. If the Warriors want to salvage this season and make a run at anything, they're going to have to figure it out on that end of the floor, whether or not Clay turns it up or not on the offensive side.
Yeah, that's going to be where they're going to have to lie their cap because, I mean, as much as they're known as the Splash Brothers and that being their thing, the personnel, even if Clay does figure it out a bit more, is not that of an elite 3-point shooting team this year, even if everyone figures it out. Like, Wiggins is clearly taking a step back. Clay is not going to be as good as he once was. Curry's still playing relatively well, although not quite as good as he was over the first month or so of the year. But, like, Looney's a non-shooter. Trace Jackson Davis isn't exactly a great 3-point shooter. Draymond, although, like you said, has been better this year from three, still not a great 3-point shooter, and I don't know how long that keeps up. Kuminga been better as a 3-point shooter this year, but not exactly a great threat from there, and it's not someone that most teams are going to respect. So they're just lacking the personnel. I mean, CP's not been great from there. Corey Joseph is far from some elite 3-point shooter if he seemingly continues to get minutes. So like the personnel is lacking. The defense is going to have to be what they lie their cap on. Not that their personnel is great there either, especially once a guy like if Clay is still getting his minutes, if CP now is into the starting lineup on occasion, he's not exactly an elite defensive guy at this point in time in his career. So once Draymond's back, between Trace Jackson, between Kevon Looney, can that three and hopefully enough production from Wiggins, hopefully he can get enough minutes with enough offensive help that they can get his defense on the floor to hopefully help out a little bit. They're going to need enough of those guys to really contribute to keep that afloat because I don't know if they're going to be great at any certain thing this year. They're just going to have to keep it afloat with their shooting, keep it afloat with their defense to be at least in the middle of the pack and hopefully be able to ramp it up for a few stretches to get what they need in some fourth quarters or in a big playoff game or whatever it may be when the time comes for that.
They're really, really good at one thing. They're actually like one of the best rebounding teams in the league. And I don't Kevon Looney's a human. They're first in the league in offensive rebounds.
Your boy too. Trace, man, he be on the glass too, man.
But he wasn't even in the rotation until the last couple of weeks. So I mean, like for them to be the best offensive rebounding team in the league, like that's
bro. The last few games I watched of theirs, they played Miami. They were getting hella offensive rebounds, and I didn't even know that stat. So it's just funny, like thinking back on these games, like they were getting hella offensive rebounds that game. They played Boston a couple weeks ago. Hella offensive boards, especially down the stretch. Like, that's just weird from a Warriors team because this has always been small ball.
Right.
We're just going to, space and pace and stuff. It's weird seeing that, man. It is. But I was going to say the worst thing that could have happened to this team was Draymond and Kevin Durant getting into it in that random game in LA, man. Worst thing that could have happened, man. Because if they had KD, the window might be extended just a little bit, man. But now it's like we might be looking into the eyes of this dynasty being dead because we're just kind of like we're talking about them in this sense because they're the Warriors. But like, if somebody can figure out, they can. But maybe they can't. Maybe this is just the end of their window. Like that championship.
It's over because it's the main guys. It's not the supporting guys. Like, usually think with the window, it's like you got your guys, but, like, who's around them? But it's like we talked about this before where, they're like – they had one of, like, the best bench plus-minuses in the league or, like, just best bench production overall with, like, Chris Paul and Dario and the boys running out there. But it's like it's your main guys who are really struggling. And obviously, like, Draymond with his, suspension and all that, Clay we've been talking about it for the past 15 minutes, and then – extending that to Wiggins, who became a main guy way later. But when your main guys are the ones who are struggling, it's over.
It's like Steph's going to be there, so they're going to keep trying to rekindle the lineups, and we know they're probably not going to move off of Draymond. I don't know if I could see Clay in another jersey. We kind of talked about this like previously, but if Clay would be the guy to get moved or be in a different uniform, but I still couldn't see them willingly wanting to do that. But Dunleavy being the new guy does make it a little different maybe. So I don't know. Depending on how the rest of this season goes, if they make any in-season moves, off-season could be really interesting in Golden State, man.
Definitely could be. Like you say, as long as Curry's still there, they're going to try and remain competitive right until he retires. I mean, they're not going to die out. They got nothing to make them want to say, let's rebuild. Like, you're going to ride this era until it dies, whether you should or not. So there's no reason to not continue to field a competitive team as long as Curry's there. So whether that gives them any success, we'll see, but they're going to die trying at the very least.
My homie just texted me halfway through tonight's game. Moody still hasn't played. Gotta love it, man. You gotta love it.
He has to follow you on Twitter, bro. Like that, you're Moses Moody's biggest fan right now.
You know, I like this game coming out of college, and I feel like every time you've seen the guy play, he does something good that you see and you're like, oh, he's a good basketball player. Even like his rookie year, he's getting conference finals minutes, guarding Luka, doing a good job on Luka in close games. And now it's to the point where we're talking about Corey Joseph is playing good, so it's tough to get him minutes. Man, miss me with that shit, man. Send him somewhere where he can play. Like, send him to a team that could use a shooter. Send him to Toronto. They need some shooting. A lot of teams need shooting.
Sure.
Like, just send him somewhere.
I'll happily take. I can't believe we didn't talk about that in the Pascal things. I feel like I've heard plenty of Pascal Warriors rumors over the past couple months.
I don't even know what a trade package would look like.
I don't know either. That'd be a weird package. It'd be a very weird package.
Kuminga would be enticing if the Raptors didn't already have Scotty and RJ and guys.
Yeah. Kuminga would be a pretty awkward fit. But I do got to cook up some framework quickly now because I'm intrigued because they don't really have a true. They don't really have a true salary matching guy outside of
That's a
CP, which probably means Wiggins goes there, and unless it's a 3-teamer. So it's.
I'll take Wiggins though.
Weird.
He can't. I know he's been bad this year, but come on, man. We're getting all the Canadians.
Might as well. Go ahead.
Where's Kim Birchall? We're bringing him back.
I don't know if he's employed right now, to be honest. Not by an NBA team, at least.
Oh, he's overseas. I feel like I saw something recently. He's definitely overseas.
Yeah, that would make sense. I'm sure he's still playing, but
we need a 5 right now. We just traded Precious.
This is true. This is very true. How would the money work? I think Sarge would have to go in.
Damn,
still doesn't make the money work. They'd have to give up some bodies to make this money work. This is a really weird trade.
Hey, man, Steve Kerr said they got depth. They got 14 guys that deserve minutes.
Apparently, we're bringing Corey Joseph back, too.
You might have to. I think it's going to be Cujo. And it's going to be Goy Santos to make the money work, I think.
God.
Nope, it still doesn't work. Yeah, they got to give up like 5 guys to make this work, or they got to give out Chris Paul. That's the only way this works. And even still, if it's 5 guys, those 5 include Wiggins, Moody, and Trish Jackson-Davis. So they're giving up some young talent. Well, that still doesn't work? Oh,
they're trying to be competitive, man.
It's chucked.
Oh, man.
Kuminga would have to be involved. He has to be. Kuminga or Looney have to be involved.
Oh, big Loon in a Raptors jersey.
Yo would have like 3 bigs. Him, Pirtle, and Trace Jackson-Davis.
Pirtle is like good, but for big Loon, bro, Pirtle. For big Loon?
I got it. Nope, I got it for no Kuminga and no Loon. This seems
Loon ain't been more
valid.
Loon hasn't been great this year. He's been cool.
He's the main rebounder on the best rebounding team in basketball.
How many boards is he averaging?
Not even that many for real, as opposed to
Wiggins.
It's
I
like
forgot about Gary Payton, man. What the
Looney's only get like 20 minutes per game, but that's the 20 minutes per game I want on my team.
I like that for the Raptors. I like that.
I don't hate it.
Warriors, if you're that desperate, go ahead, do it. Sure, why not? Yeah,
2026 first rounder. They might be asked by then. That might be a good first rounder, actually.
Could be worse.
What is it? 2020 what?
2026. They got flexibility. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they can move anywhere from 2025 up to maybe 2029. I don't think they moved off many picks yet. I got the
CP 0
2025,
rings
2026,
is
27,
retire.
28, 29. I got everything. So.
Mills was like he put Curry MVP like a week ago on Twitter, and I'm like, bro, it's dead, man. Like, give it up. It's over.
Dude,
Yeah,
Chris Paul is like
fair.
that's like the main reason why the bench is better than the starters is Chris Paul.
Bro, when that tweet when they said he got the bench running like the Navy, that shit is so accurate, man. Because when that bench comes in, like they really be the pace is there. They put up threes, but then here comes the starting five: Klay Thompson, just chucking up bad shots. Yeah, even 2 weeks ago, still crazy, man. They've been bad for a while.
Like I said earlier, with that winning mattering this year, just because there's so many top level guys. Like, yeah, with the Warriors being below 500, Curry's not even sniffing the MVP race.
Is he gonna sniff an All NBA team?
That's a
That's
discussion.
going to be tough, too. That will definitely be a discussion in a couple months' time.
I know we're some weeks from our All-Star ballots, but because right now he would be a fringe guy for me.
Steph Curry's making the All-Star team, bro. Stop.
I'm talking about our ballots. We don't go off of fan votes.
That's true. Yeah, I think I've done it before as predictions, and I come in and you guys are like, "This isn't predictions. This is our ballot." And I'm like,
"It's our ballots. This is who we would have as All-Stars." So
that's why I vote Aaron Gordon. That's why I vote Chris Middleton.
You were right about one of those.
Yeah, you gotta swing, and sometimes I'll miss, and sometimes I won't. But I'll take a 500 batting average.
That's pretty good. You got one guy that nobody had, and Aaron Gordon wasn't that far off either.
Yeah, I didn't mind that one. I was not giving anyone who missed significant time that leverage last year, which didn't help my predictions, but that's okay.
But didn't like Paul George make it?
Yeah, and none of us had PG. I don't think.
Drew Holiday made it in the East, which some guys that deserve spots over Drew last year for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yo, if we're talking about All-Star stuff right now, real quick, because I know we're not going to talk about it in this episode. I don't think we can call Derek White underrated anymore because I don't see any player on Twitter get as much love as Derek White.
I hate it, man.
Everybody, dude, Derek White is the most beloved player in the NBA, right? Rightfully so. He's played great, but I don't see hardly any Derek White hate. But I see so much Derek White love on the timeline.
Yes.
And it's not like I'm even a part of Celtics Twitter because I'm not a Celtics fan. And I don't even follow that many Celtics accounts.
I blame JJ Redick, man. He started.
Rightfully so.
We talked about it on the pod.
Does he have a nickname?
No.
Because I feel like for his aura to be complete, he needs a nickname, bro. I can't fully type out Derek White every time.
Yeah, I feel it. Because every time I tweet about him, it's just Derek White.
Dude, I feel like for all the Celtics players, it just ends up being like it's just shorthand, like JT, JB.
It's got to be something to do with the baldness of his head, like, right?
Yeah. Bald, yeah. You can't call him like JT, like JB, KP, DW does not. Don't bring up
D White. D White sounds too much like the White. Bald Derek is insane, bro. Different player, man. He's been, career year at he's like 27, 28, so he's in like his prime, but
he's still not in the All-Star game. But he's
not. He's not. And
I saw somebody say Derek White's the most underrated player in the league, and it reminded me of people saying Dame was underrated in like 2018, and I'm like, dog. If everybody's been saying
is underrated now,
that Dame has been underrated for the past 4 years, he's not underrated anymore. People
that happened with Drew Holiday too. Like he still gets said most underrated guy in the league. Like he's been underrated for like 7 years. Yeah, Trae Young's becoming underrated.
Agreed.
I think D Fox is underrated too. He gets some love, I agree.
He does not get talked about, man. Like
he got his flowers last year. But he's been
Tyrese had like that really good month of December. I feel like that's way more praise than what De'Aaron Fox has gotten all year. He's been incredible.
I feel like people don't talk about Tyrese Maxey as much right now. Like guys last year, like Tyrese Maxey, De'Aaron Fox.
He slowed down a
Like,
little bit, but he's still.
but some of those guys got so much love last year, and it's like this year they've gotten even better, but don't get that same recognition.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously we got a lot of season left, but like if season ended today, at least personally, I got De'Aaron above Halliburton on any All NBA teams that I'm voting for. But I don't think the media would have it that way.
That's Mr.
I don't think
2020
so
right
either.
there. Come on, man.
I don't think so either. And Tyrese has been great, but De'Aaron's been different, man. That boy been different.
All NBA, I feel like, takes winning into account more than just pure stats. And Sack is good off De'Aaron's back. So even if they're statistically similar or playing at a similar caliber.
It's going to be interesting this year, too, because it's positionless, too. So that's going to bring another dynamic.
Very interesting.
I remember when he used to say that all NBA would make it like all guards, but after seeing the past couple MVP races and they just get dominated by front court guys, like that's
I think it'll be pretty like even still. Like we might get like one team that's like maybe 4 front court guys or something weird like that, but I feel like it'll be pretty like split around for.
I think overall the 15 guys, like I think it'll be a good split, but yeah, like you're saying with like second team might end up being like 4 guards and a forward, and then third team might be like 4 front court players. That's definitely very possible.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. I mean, even just based off MVP race this year, I mean, it's top 5: Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, Luka, Shea for the most part. Like it's not going to be anything outrageous that wouldn't normally happen. So it shouldn't be too bad on that front. Let's move to the Lakers. We got to talk about the other struggling team in the West that's trying to build around the last few years of their star. And boys haven't been playing great either since they won that in-season tournament.
Fraudulent champions once again.
Another Mickey Mouse title.
Mickey Mouse. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about the Lakers, man. I had kind of high hopes for them coming into the year. And it's like we've seen it in stretches, but consistently it's just not there. And Darvin Ham be throwing out some weird lineups, which I don't really love. They've dealt with some guys missing time and stuff, some guys not playing as good as they were advertised going into the year. But man, what it really seems like is a team that's really dependent on their guys being like elite every single night, and they don't have that luxury that maybe like Boston, Milwaukee, Denver might have, where they have other guys outside of their main dudes that can perform on any given night. LA, man, it's really like they need AD to be elite, looking like a top 5-ish player in the league every night, and they need LeBron to still be great at this age, which is just you're asking a lot for those guys to be. They have to be that good in the regular season just for you to get to the playoffs. So it's rough. That's why we're going to keep hearing the chatter about in-season trades for them, because they're just mid right now. Like that's the best way to say it. They're just an okay team. Some nights they look great, other nights they look terrible, and that's just not a team that you're looking at seriously when it comes to being like a contender, especially in the Western Conference, where we've seen some teams maybe exceed expectations and they look a lot more of a threat to taking the West crown.
Yeah, I think when it comes to this team's concerns, for me the biggest thing is that right now they're struggling even with LeBron and AD both playing, and most of the time playing pretty well at that. Like for the most part, when you were seeing this team struggle, it'd be like LeBron groin injury or foot injury and he's missing the next 20 games, or AD is day to day and he's missing like 2 games here, 3 games there, and he's out all the time. And it's like, okay, these just keep leading to more losses, which just add up over time. And having their main guys healthy, like the only person who's out for a significant amount of time right now is Gabe Vincent, and he wasn't playing great anyways. That brings an extra level of concern to me, especially with them being a bottom 10 offense. A LeBron-led team being a bottom 10 offense feels pretty out of character, and I don't have like the stats on hand to back that up, but that just feels pretty abnormal. And it just shows like, yeah, they signed a lot of really high-value free agents this summer, and we thought their offseason was really good. And for that to really kind of backfire on them and for it to be like their top 2 guys are playing really well, but outside of that, there's like not a whole lot going on. That's really unfortunate. And I think what it mainly's come down to is the shooting. Like, I think their like percentage numbers really don't look that terrible on paper. I think they're really heavily brought down by just a couple guys like Cam Reddish, Gabe Vincent, kind of really bringing those numbers down. Everybody else is about average to even a couple guys having some solid 3-point seasons, but they are really low in volume. Like, they do not take a good volume of 3-point shots. And without that firepower, it's just hard to keep up with teams a lot of nights. Like, if a team gets hot from 3 and you just aren't taking the amount of attempts to keep up with that, you're just going to get outshot and you're going to lose those games. Now, you can sometimes get away with it. Like, Minnesota's a pretty mediocre offense, but they can get away with it because their defense is the best in the league. And LA has a good defense, but not like top of the league where it can really take up to you just not taking 3-point shots that often.
It's an interesting comparison too, like you said, compared to the Timberwolves. They're both low in volume. Like, Lakers are third last. Only 2 teams that are taking less threes than them are the notoriously known horrific spacing Pistons and the poor 3-point shooting Magic team. So not exactly in great competition. The Timberwolves are down there too. They're in 24th. Difference being the Lakers are currently 20th in percentage. They're around 35%. Timberwolves are currently 4th. They're at 38.3%. So low volume you can get away with, but not when you're shooting the 20th best rate in the league. And like you said, there have been quite a few guys who have shot very well from 3 this year. LeBron notably is one of them. He's at about 41%. Taurean Prince had a rough start, but he's really bounced back. He's back up to 40%. Even AD, although again, not much volume, is shooting 37.5% there this year. So they got a few guys who are shooting it pretty well, but Rui's a little bit below what they would have hoped. Reeves has taken a bit of a step back from where they were. You mentioned Reddish, although he's been very good defensively for them. At least he's been a solid role player and a contributor, which was far from a given coming into this season. Offensively, he hasn't quite been where they would have hoped, especially from the 3-point shooting standpoint. So that efficiency with their level of volume is definitely a problem in this league that is just becoming more and more offensive. And I don't know if you guys saw the tweet, but there's a tweet that came out in the last couple of days or so. Like, a significant portion of the worst defenses of all time and the worst offenses of all time from an offensive and defensive rating standpoint are this year. Like, it is more and more so becoming an offensive dominated league. And that's just only becoming more and more evident year on year. And 3-point shooting is the forefront of that. That's no secret to anyone. The Lakers hoped that was going to be better this year with Rui back, with Reeves back, with Cam Reddish in, with D'Lo back, with Taurean Prince in. It just hasn't been enough. And LeBron and AD have been doing their thing, and AD has been doing his best to keep the defense afloat, and he's been brilliant. Hasn't been enough to have that elite defense back, given Vando missed a lot of time, and he's now back and getting himself comfortable in the starting lineup now over the last little bit. But they seem to really be, again, just like we talked about with the Warriors, just maybe on a slightly better level. They're kind of just stuck in the middle. Average 3-point shooting team, average defense. If AD misses any time, they're going to be probably a really bad defense. And knock on wood, he's been healthy for quite a while now. Hopefully that continues, but every day that he's healthy again, it becomes a little bit more worrisome as there's more miles put on his body. So they're still fine. I'm not ready to hit the panic button on them. I think there's still a bit more of a jump from Reeves to take. Maybe D'Lo can find his game a little bit more, although again, like, percentages aren't terrible for him, but it has been inconsistent as per typical for him. So I'm not overly alarmed. I think they're going to be fine, but I don't know if they're looking like this potential contender that a lot of people were hoping they could be this year.
Yeah, they're not really like great at anything, kind of like you were saying, and that makes it, I think, really hard for them to be a true contender. Now, what's weird is that when you look at them, they're at the top of the league in one thing and one thing only, and that's that they do not get called for fouls. They have the least fouls in the league, and people like to say that the refs kind of, might like the Lakers a little bit, but I'm not going to open that whole can of worms. But outside of that, they're just so middle of the pack in every way, and I think, it looks like this team's going to end up really mid. I think the silver lining on it is that while it was a bit more lopsided last year with a really bad first half and a really good second half, they were only a 7th seed last year, and they made it as far as they did. So I think that they could be a team that could really get away with kind of coasting through the regular season and really turn it up to come postseason. But the 10th seed is probably not where you want to be doing that. I think they could push it to at least get to like 7, or at least a range where you only have to win one play-in game to secure that playoff spot. That's going to raise the confidence quite significantly. So I think it could be better, but it could be worse at the same time. And that's pretty much just going to be how it is when you're 17-17.
Definitely, but for them, especially like a team like Miami too, even though they made those deep playoff runs last year, being playing teams, you don't want to bank on that. Like again, like that's just, even though you can do it, like you just don't want to bank on that again, because now you might get to the point where you might have to play an extra playing game. The first round matchup might be tougher than a Memphis or a hurt Giannis led team, right? Like, I think out west it would be. You don't want to see OKC in that first round, or
you might. I don't know.
I would get to that later, but you don't. You don't.
I don't. I don't think fully healthy. You got to think Memphis was dealing with a lot of injuries last year. OKC fully healthy, even if that's their first playoff run, it's not ideal to play a LeBron team. But I wouldn't be like, they won't be fearing LeBron. I don't think they would.
I don't think they would either.
I don't think anybody fears LeBron anymore.
And I love Ja, but current Shea is a lot better than Ja was in that point in time. Much better.
Yes.
He's better than Ja is now.
Well, yes, but just for the parallel of that series.
Ja's been great too. But, you just don't want to bank on, like, we can do it. We can be a lower seed, make a deep run. You just don't want to bank on that. So, LA is a curious team, man. And it's really as simple as, like, how you guys just mentioned, just being a low-volume three-point shooting team. You got to be so efficient inside the arc, and their half-court offense is just it's not pleasant to watch. It's not that good. Like, when AD gets going, like, he's gonna do what he does, but really outside of him and whatever LeBron does, it's just the half-court offense just isn't good. And they're asking like Taurean Prince to be a high volume guy from three, which he's always been like a cool 3-point shooter, but you're asking him to be like one of your knockdown spacers, and just asking a lot for somebody like him that's been just notorious. Like, he's gonna take 3 or 4 attempts from three a game, shoot 38%. Like, you're just asking a lot from those guys. You're asking Rui to be a spacer. Like, they're just asking guys that aren't really that type of mold or use that type of responsibility. So they're just in a tough spot. It always seems like the teams that we like their off seasons might not always work out the same way when it's a lot of like role players being added in and stuff. Like, when you add that significant guy, it might look better, but I just feel like time and time again, like, you just see a team like make a lot of role player type additions and we're like, man, that's a really good offseason. They got a lot of depth. It just never seems like it works out for some reason. I don't know why, but that just seems like it's always the case.
I think it depends on the team. I'm sure there's some times in history where it's worked, but I'm trying to think of a good example in my head, because I don't want to come out here and say like just having depth guys is like a bad thing, but
I feel it might always just be Laker teams, honestly. Like, to be honest, it might just be Laker teams. So I feel like
Dallas is sort of similar. Like, Dallas is like better than they were last year, or how they ended.
I think we recognize Dallas though. Like, we all said good off season, they'll be better. That's true. But how much would that affect their seeding in the West?
Well, I feel like I was the only one who was like low in the like. I had the Lakers as a 6 seed, being like, yeah, they have talent, but I think they're gonna coast a little bit in the regular season. And everybody was like, no, Lakers are going to be top 4 for sure. So I kind of saw it coming with the Lakers, but it wasn't even for the reasons I thought that. Like, when I said they were going to coast a bit in the regular season, I thought it was going to be LeBron and AD. I thought it was going to be LeBron and AD. But I know, I'm like, LeBron and AD are out here putting up 40 pieces. It's the other guys who just ain't showing up to play.
Gabe Vincent's the new Kendrick Nunn. Like, Is he ever gonna play again?
Gabe Vincent was horrible, dude. I'm telling you, like, if you look at like their overall team 3-point percentage looks really bad, but like you go look and it's like, yeah, look, like LeBron's over 40%. That's crazy for LeBron over 40%. Like that's a good ass season from him. And most of their top guys, like we clown on D'Lo all season, 38%, not bad. But bro, when you have Gabe Vincent and Cam Reddish both out here shooting, Gabe Vincent especially 11% from three on over 3 attempts.
For
Bro,
context, he has only taken 17 this year, though, so he's not really affecting their percentage that much.
Okay, well, Cam Reddish below 30%.
Reddish is rough. He's taken 74.
He's played 27 games.
What happened to Cam Reddish's jump shot, man? Needs to be studied, man, because he was supposed to be a shooter coming into the league.
Christian Wood too. He's bringing that 3-point. Christian Wood, he's played 29 games.
I feel like recently he hasn't really been in the rotation as much.
But if you're talking about their full season stats, he's played 29 games and he was shooting like trash.
Yeah,
the shooting's not been great, but yeah, he has been falling out. Like he had 5 DNPs in December. Yeah,
you're playing Jackson Hayes over him. Jackson Hayes isn't good.
Yeah, the backup in rotation is a bit nasty.
Jackson Hayes has been getting run on the low. Like he's only averaging 10 minutes, but he's played 30 games.
He ain't good, but he's been playing. This ain't high school Jackson Hayes.
Hey, all respect to your Cincinnati Legends, man.
Seen him play in person. He was in like foul trouble the whole game. But
that sounds like Jackson Hayes.
Yes. All right, y'all. We got to get into this contender versus pretender because y'all interested me.
Welcome to the episode.
We do. We were talking about OKC, so let's get to OKC because I'm thinking Gabe might not quite be as high on them as I am come the postseason.
Dude, it's just vibes. Like, I literally, I don't feel like I really see a team ever go from outside the playoffs to like real contender like right away.
But when's the last time we've seen a team like OKC make the
Phoenix,
with personnel that they've added?
Memphis did it like 3 years ago. Denver did it that first time they made the playoffs.
I don't disagree, but what changed about that Memphis team from one year to the next other than internal improvement?
I feel like that's most of OKC, but
they added Chet.
Chet is damn good, but I'm.
What did Memphis got Steven Adams that 1 year?
Yeah, they flipped JV for Steven Adams. Yeah,
and then like Denver, I feel like was most of the same guys because they didn't flip for Aaron Gordon till later. They're still running like Gary Harris, Jamal Murray.
That was after a conference finals appearance and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say that was pretty later on, but just those teams where it's mostly internal improvements, and then they get way better. It's like usually that team's not a contender year one. Even a team like Sac, who like made the move with Sabonis, added some guys, and then they make that breakout team. Basically, is what I'm saying. That team's first year in the playoffs, they usually are not a real contender. And as good as Chet has been, you're banking on a rookie in the playoffs for them to be a real contender. And I don't have any stats to back it up because they've been good at almost everything. They're super efficient. They hustle. They defend. They do everything well. They have a star who, by all accounts, shows up in big games. We have no reason to think that he wouldn't. I have no reason to say that they are a pretender besides the history of young teams' first year in the playoffs usually not being the year they go super far. Like the only team that jumped in and truly made that run right away was Phoenix, but Phoenix added Chris Paul, and he really like worked with 8-8 and had that great playoff run. So that's the closest thing they could say. But if you're comparing like a rookie in Chet to like this 15-year veteran floor general in Chris Paul, like I don't know if I could bank on the same impact there. it's just based on parallels and historical comparisons where I'm like, I can't take the breakout team as the team that's going to be the one to be the real contender. All on vibes. You can give me any stats you want, and your stats will probably tell you that they should be considered a real contender because Chet has that defense rolling. Shea has that offense rolling. Dort's a great glue guy. J-Dub's a great piece to have around them. They have good depth on the bench. Isaiah Joe's a great shooter. So many great pieces on that team. I just think they need some more experience before they're really going for the big one. That's all I'm saying.
That's valid. There's a lot of validity to that. There's too much with this team that I like for me to ignore it. And like you say, statistically they are there. They're one of two teams who's a top 5 offense and defense right now. The other team being Philly. They're top 5 in bottom of the turnovers list. They're top 5 in steals. They're first in the league in 3-point field goal percentage. Top 5 in field goal percentage. Like they got it all, and that's the thing that I liked about them coming into this year, and I like now going forward is like they've been a disciplined, smart team that isn't the typical young team. Like they're solid defensively, they're very disciplined with the ball, they're not turnover heavy, they don't have a ton of these defensive lapses or lapses on offense or really struggle to close games. They don't have that issue. Now, part of that is the fact that although Shea does lack that playoff experience, he's been around now. Like he's not second, third year guy leading this team. Like he's on his second deal. He's been around for 200, 300 plus games now at this point. Playoff experience lacking undoubtedly, and that's the biggest concern. And the reason why I think they're more of a dark horse contender as opposed to someone that you legitimately think is one of the key threats to make it. But there's just too much here for me to be against them. The shooting has been amazing, and that was my biggest concern going into this season with them. Volume, not anything absurd, but Case and Wallace is shot great. Isaiah Joe is shot great. J-Dub has improved there. Shea again tonight, continuing to show that he's improving from that area. And Chet has just been even better than I thought he would be. So there's too much here for me to ignore it. They got their few guys off the bench in Kaysen and Isaiah Joe. And then whether you go with Jay Will, whether you go with Kendrick Williams, they got the depth guys to go there and get what they need done on the defensive end and from a spacing and shooting standpoint. They're not a favorite. They're probably a year or two away from that unless they make some big move at the deadline, which I don't expect. But they have everything statistically and from an eye test standpoint that I need to say that they are a contender. Just not a favorite because of that lack of playoff experience. If this is in 3 or 4 years' times and they have these types of stats and they have the experience behind them, I might say they're a favorite, but I'm not quite there yet.
I've been back and forth on this all day. I see both sides. Like everything from the eye test tells you one of the best teams out west, record aside, just pure talent, their brand of basketball, one of the best teams out west for sure. But then when I think about a contender, I'm like, when I think of a contender, it's like I could see this team reaching the NBA Finals. That's how I feel a contender is. I don't know if I'm there with OKC to where I wouldn't be really surprised if they made the finals. And I think it's because of, to Gabe's point, which is my thinking too, it just seems premature because this would be their first playoff run. And it would be an anomaly for them to make like a finals run, a real finals push. It just doesn't happen like that, man. Like a young team led by a young player that has not had a playoff run where he's been the guy. That's the only thing that concerns me a little bit. Now, Shea just might be that dude. He just might be that dude, like how Ant came in and was elite as, the number one option in the playoffs. He could be that guy. I think he will be that kind of guy, but it's a little premature for me. It's a little premature for me. If they made a trade and got like Lowry Marketing this season, I might think a little differently. But current state right now, really good team. I think they could win a series, maybe 2. But I would be surprised if they were like a team to come out west. And that's what I think about a contender. That's how I measure it. Like, would I be surprised if they made the finals or not? I think I would be surprised with OKC. So I'm going to lean slightly towards the pretender side.
I think there are benefits to their well-roundedness as far as like trying to shake that sort of historical precedent. Because, you look at some other teams, like you think of like Cleveland last year, it's like, okay, star scorer like Shea or Donovan Mitchell, and then like really good defense around them. Cleveland's defense was great, and he had supporting pieces like, Mobley, Allen, Garland, like this year, J-Dub, Chet, Lou Dort. And, you got to the playoffs and it didn't exactly translate, but we know Cleveland had that thing with the really shaky spacing. So they had a really big weakness there. And I don't know if OKC has like a weakness that big. Like Sacramento. Yeah. Sacramento last year, they couldn't defend, being the breakout squad. I think we've seen Memphis for years has had a bit of a rebounding issue. And so year one, like Ja was great first year in the playoffs, Ant was great his first year in the playoffs, but the Timberwolves team, they didn't go anywhere because, Cat didn't play well. And, they just weren't the more talented team in the series because they came in as like a 7-seed or an 8-seed. So, I mean, I think OKC, one, coming in as a high seed in their first playoff appearance, and two, like just not having as notable of a weakness as some other teams is going to help them. But, yeah, I think Reek's like logic of would I be surprised to see this team in the NBA Finals is really sound because, if you look at the West right now, if Denver makes it, not too surprised. Everybody else, you're starting to have some conversations now. We can get into it with Minnesota, but with OKC, yeah, I would be a little surprised, like you were saying.
I think it would take like – now I'm kind of walking it back a little bit because I feel like if they ran into like – they just had that matchup luck – and maybe like Denver got knocked out early, like, and then you're to the point where like if things go like right for them, like matchup wise, then I'm thinking like they probably could like make the finals.
That's the thing, is I think that's the problem with me for determining contenders right now, especially out west. Is Denver's the only team that I can look at in a matchup against OKC, and I can say I feel pretty confident 9 times out of 10 Denver's going to win that. Every other matchup, I can make a pretty good argument for OKC. So it's tough right now. And like you guys bring up some great points that this is very much an anomaly. But OKC's team is also a bit of an anomaly in a lot of ways. And the West isn't exactly full of a bunch of powerhouses right now outside of Denver. So if there ever was a year for someone to really ruffle some feathers and shake things up a bit, maybe it's the year.
That's the thing. I don't know who could knock out Denver early if they're fully healthy.
Luka Masterclass, maybe? They're around that range.
Hell no. I don't know if I could see any team really knocking out Denver. Maybe, I don't know. Clippers have been playing good. If they're healthy, that could be an interesting series. But even then, I'm picking Denver probably over everybody out west.
I'm so low on the Clippers. I'm low on the. I don't care how good they are right now. I'm low on the Clippers.
Let's talk about it because, to me,
I got them as a pretender.
If you got a fully healthy Kawhi, in my eyes, especially with how good we've seen him play, in my eyes, Kawhi's already proven he can be that guy in the postseason, leading the team to a championship. That's a contending team in my book.
For me.
That's a contending team in my book, man. As good as they've looked in this last month of stretch of basketball, about a month, they've looked so damn good. And if Kawhi's healthy come postseason time, no reason in my book why they wouldn't be a contending team. Outside of Denver, that would probably be the team I would look at and have like the most confidence in.
Yeah,
I don't have the utmost confidence in Paul George in the playoffs. He's had his notable blunders. I definitely don't have confidence in James Harden. He's had his blunders, and we know just his style at play, I feel like gets picked apart more than most in a playoff setting, especially if they go up against a good coach. Like that, just stand around unless you have the ball, not really playing off the ball.
But I think Harden ain't been standing around as much as he used to, man. Like he's been playing off the ball more.
He hasn't been there that long. We see it when he gets to the new spot. He's happy.
Look, that's usually like a 3-game thing. they had that little rough patch when they were trying to get integrated and stuff. When you look at numbers wise, usage is down way more than what it has been in the past. He's shooting a lot more catch and shoot threes. He's just off the ball more in this setting, especially since Kawhi's been realizing he's the best player on the team and one of the best players in the league. So obviously not as great as a sample size, but it's like a 25 game sample size. So it's not small by any means. It's a pretty decent sample size, a quarter of the season that we've seen Harden play this type of role. Playoffs is different. I do agree with that, but we haven't seen this team, this iteration, right? We knew what we were getting with Harden in Philly. That's why we weren't surprised when he stunk it up. But this is different coach, different setting, different players he's playing with, different role. It's all a little different.
Dude, Garrett's asking me, how's my Western Conference Finals prediction? I don't even remember who I picked at all. I don't even remember making that prediction.
We didn't even predict the.
That's what I'm saying, dude. I don't even know what I said.
I think we made a final. I think we made finals picks, but that's it.
Yeah, I think we made title winners picks, but that's about it.
I definitely know I had Denver there because why wouldn't Denver be there? But yeah, just their top 7, like it's a really solid top 7, but it's just questions about like, Paul George, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. Norman Powell will probably be pretty steady. Terrence Mann will probably be pretty steady. Zubac does. So, 4 out of the 7, Kawhi is always going to bring it in a playoff environment. They're going to be real steady. It's just the fact that, their second, third, and fourth most important guys, I'm going to have questions about come postseason time because they notoriously underperform. And it's going to make me skeptical. That's why I have to call them a pretender. I have to err.
The PG playoff narrative is actually one of the funniest things ever. He was bad in the bubble. I'm not ignoring that. But really, outside of that, you can't find too many just and the Utah series in OKC. Outside of that, you cannot find too many just horrendous Paul George playoff runs. Indiana, he was the fucking guy. He was one of the best playoff players in the league. In the Blazers series where Dame waved him off, he was the second best player on the court outside of Dame. He played way better than what Westbrook did. And then we saw when the Clippers made the conference finals, PG was not on par with Kawhi when they were both playing, but he was good and then was able to step it up when Kawhi was out. So I don't know where this Paul George playoff narrative stuff really came from. It was mainly bubble. It was the bubble that made it. But saying that he's just a bad playoff performer it's kind of lazy, Gabe. I'm gonna be honest. That's kind of lazy of you. To be honest.
All right. Okay.
I will say for a counterbalance to that, his 3-point shooting as a whole has been the biggest thing in the playoffs that has been bad over the last few years. That's the biggest thing he'll need to improve. The rest of his game, post-bubble, relatively speaking, has been fine in the postseason. But regardless of PG, regardless of concerns with Harden, they just need Kawhi to be healthy. That's the biggest thing for where I'm at. If Kawhi's healthy, they got a chance. Kawhi's not healthy, they're done. They need that top 10 guy when healthy if they're going to have a chance. They're top 10 in offensive and defensive rating, top 5 3-point percentage team, top 5 field goal percentage team. They're where you need them to be. And since they had that rough patch, they figured it out with Harden. Harden's looked more comfortable. Russ has looked more comfortable on the bench. You're going to have Mason Plumlee coming back. If not tomorrow, then relatively soon. So they've been relatively healthy so far this year, and that's the biggest thing. That continues, especially on Kawhi's standpoint. Again, I don't think they're a favorite, but I think they are in with a very good chance. I think they're in that maybe slightly just above OKC tier, wherever you want to slot them in between Denver and OKC. But as long as they have that opportunity with health on this team, that's been the biggest thing holding them back every year. Until Kawhi goes out, they look like a team that can win it. And I think this is the best team they've had so far.
Hey, looking at it, here's what I'm going to say in response. I think this is where that Paul George narrative comes from even more. Because you talk about the Utah series, that was 18. 19, I do think it's he played well. It was just that last shot. People were going to blow that pretty out of context. Then the bubble happened. So that was the third year. Then the fourth year, 2021, okay, he did turn it up. They had that run. But then the year after that, I believe, is when he got like health and safety protocol or whatever. And then they ended up falling out. So it wasn't really bad play, but it was really bad timing. And so him like randomly going out, I think didn't help. And then he didn't even play in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, he was hurt.
So he's like like the last 2 seasons, he didn't even play in their postseason appearances, play-in or playoffs. So I think it's just been a lack of really like having an ascending play level. He hasn't really had that play like that super like he hasn't really raised his game a ton. I think like there's been the notable blunders. There's been more of those notable blunders than notable like, wow, Paul George has really like raised his game to like a, you know how people are just saying, wow, like Anthony Edwards had this crazy series or John Morant just had this crazy series.
Well,
like I feel like Paul George hasn't had as many of those, like those super breakout performances.
I think the beautiful thing about him being Kawhi's teammate is not every team, really very few teams in history really have multiple guys that significantly raise their play, right? You really just need your guy to raise their play. And Kawhi raises his play once it comes to the postseason. So I think that's the good thing. I do see what you're saying there. I feel like that's the good thing for this team. And like to Jacob's point in chat, look, you can make that assessment like, will Kawhi be there? We can only talk about what we've seen this season. And what we've seen this season is Kawhi's been available. He's missed only 4 games this entire year. He's played 20 in 28 games. So to what we know, Kawhi Leonard is healthy. And as we are assessing contenders, we see a healthy Kawhi Leonard on that assessment. So we're just making the judgment that he would be healthy if the playoffs were to start today. And I would have him as a contender. Dev would. Gabe wouldn't. I'm interested to see, Gabe, who do you have as a contender in the Western Conference? Because if it's not the Clippers, if it's not the Thunder, is it going to be the other team that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, it's Denver and it's Minnesota.
Okay.
Make your case.
Cook.
Okay. That defense is ridiculous. And I know we've seen Rudy Gobert defenses get picked apart in the postseason before, but this isn't like Rudy Gobert, kind of Royce O'Neal, and a bunch of guys who can't guard. This is Rudy Gobert. This is Cat playing the best defense of his career. This is Anthony Edwards who can go. This is Jaden McDaniels who can really go. This is Mike Conley, who is aging but has always been a solid defensive hand. You know, this is Nikhil off the bench who can go. They got a lot of guys top to bottom who can really guard. And then on the offensive end, they have a veteran floor general and Mike Conley. They have a superstar playoff rising caliber type number 1 dominant dude in Anthony Edwards. You know, they have Cat who usually regresses in the playoffs, but if they can just hang their hat on defense and Cat can just be efficient enough from 3, that's going to be great for them. Naz Reid off the bench for them. Also a really good floor spacer, really good bench energy guy for them. He's going to help when their main front court guys take the bench for a rest for a little bit. And sometimes they even play all 3 of them out there, and it still looks fine despite all odds, making it seem like it should be terrible. Everything seems to line up in a way for them to where I don't think that they will have a fall off. Like everything about them seems very legitimate. Yes, the offense is not great, but them having a superstar level guy that can really put the team on his back, I think puts them in a good position to be fine enough. We know, I feel like when you get more matchup oriented, you get into a playoff series, you're really going the distance with another team. Just having a guy who can take over is going to be important because you're going to be in a lot of close games. It's going to come down to the wire, and it's going to be something you need. Especially if it comes down to they need to get like a couple stops at the end. They have a lot of really good perimeter guys. I don't think there's a guy you can really expose on their team on the defensive end. They just seem really well-rounded and just a really stout team that's going to be hard to take down. And it's like when you say, would I be surprised to see them make the finals? With all the talent they have and the fact that we know defense wins championships, you can't give me the number 1 defense in the league and a superstar guy. And it's not like you can make the Cleveland comparison to last year again with like Donovan Mitchell, prime scorer. But I just don't think that Minnesota's guys are as prone to have a crazy fall off as like what Cleveland did against the Knicks.
What proof do we have for that, though?
That is
Go
a
ahead,
good
yeah.
question.
If anything, there's proof that it's the opposite, at least with Cad, and then outside of that, we don't have proof.
Okay,
Gabe,
I should
don't take
say,
that. Don't
all
take
right.
that, Gabe. Don't
Well,
take that.
because offensively, I think that you could be correct. I think that you'll probably see a bit of a fall off offensively from Cat. Now, is Gobert's role on offense really that big? But I do think from like the defense and rebounding perspective, it will be fine. Like I said, Gobert defenses get picked apart, but that was usually because we know it was like the other guys couldn't guard and they just funnel into Gobert. And so that was very exposable. But when the other guys are actually able to guard on the perimeter, I think that'll help him a lot. Now, as far as Cat, you do kind of have me. I think what's better about Cat is that because he's playing the best defense of his career, if he's not as efficient, at least he's not providing you nothing. At least he's not going to be some crazy liability on the floor. So I think that strengthens their front court significantly from where these guys would have been perceived a couple years ago. It's not like Gobert has to be a major part of the offense. They also have a third big in Naz Reid that they can sub in there if the main two guys, one of them is having a bad game or even a bad series. So I just think there's a lot of flexibility there. Even Kyle Anderson, I mean, you can put him in at any point, and he's going to be solid for them. I haven't mentioned his name yet. Just a steady hand to have on the floor. So it's just they have so many guys. They have depth. I feel like they have backup plans in case, one guy or another guy doesn't come through. I think the only thing that really hurts them is if like Anthony Edwards kind of falters and he doesn't have a great series, but I fully expect him to bring his best. And especially looking at the Western Conference, like you say, like outside of Denver, like who is really that great? I think that Minnesota has a good chance in a series with almost anybody. Like if they match up with Phoenix in the first round right now, Phoenix's depth is so shaky that I think they win that series. Especially like Bradley Beal's barely on the floor. I feel like he's barely even seen the floor at all this season. So it's like I think they win that series because it's basically like a 2-on-5 the whole game. Versus like Dallas, if they end up being their first round matchup, I think they're way better than Dallas because I don't think Dallas has that good a depth either. It's just once again like 2v5. Like they just feel so much more well rounded than all these teams. I mean, if you get into like a second round series, now I'm taking them against Sacramento or the Clippers, but that's because I didn't have the Clippers pegged as a contender. Sacramento, that Sabonis is one of your primary players. I'm not going to take you seriously as a contender. And with that, you're already at the Western Conference Finals, and then it's them or Denver getting to the finals. And to me, I mean, if you're the second best team in the conference in my eyes, yeah, I'm going to have you as a contender.
Could you not look at some of the top guys from Minnesota too and be like, these are your top guys? I'm not taking you seriously either. Because Cat, now, you want to talk about somebody that stinks in the playoffs. Karl Anthony Towns, that's a playoff blunder type of guy.
I think Gobert is a victim of circumstance, and I think that I would take him seriously because he actually has defensive help around him. But besides Cat, who are you not taking seriously? Because I would definitely take Anthony Edwards seriously.
Here's my issue with Minnesota. I'm about to kind of dig into your elite defense, mid offense type of point. I would be better off if they were a better offense, or at least what are they going to go to when they get to down the stretch in games consistently? Because I've seen like a Celtics team be a top 5 offense, but when it comes to late game execution in the playoffs, not have anything that they can go to consistently to get good shots. What is Minnesota going to do consistently down the stretch in games to get quality offense in the playoffs when their offense is already kind of middle of the pack for a team that's the best team out west? I don't know where they're going to go to. Is it just give the ball to Ant and let him go? I don't trust that as much in the playoffs. Like, you need something that you can consistently go to get quality offense. They don't run a lot of two-man stuff down the stretch with him and Cat, which is maybe what you should do. They don't do that a lot. Really, ever. They don't do that down the stretch. It's just a lot of, let's get Ant the ball, let him go to work. And that's fun in the regular season. It makes for good highlights, good Bleacher Report clips and stuff like that when it goes well. When you get to the playoffs, it doesn't always work. Like, you need stuff that you can consistently go to down the stretch. And maybe they figured that out at some point. But I don't see that enough right now to where I'll look at them being a mid offense and being able to trust them and just trust their defense down the stretch in games, because we got to look at the NBA how it is now. Look, you can have an elite level defense if you want to. At the end of the day, offense wins, bro. Like you got to be able to put points on the board, especially in those critical moments. I just don't know if I can trust them enough for that. That's why I'm more leaning towards them being pretenders, because I could see them. Garrett mentioned it earlier. They're perfectly set up to fail, and I could see that being the case for them. Like high seed, maybe win the first round because the bottom of the West isn't that amazing. But they ran into like OKC, they ran into the Clippers, Denver in the second round. I would probably favor all of those teams over Minnesota. The defense is great and all, but we've seen Rudy defenses in the playoffs be set up to fail. Karl Anthony Towns is a playoff stinker. Mike Conley's getting old, so you're not going to rely on him to be great. And I think he's somebody that can be picked on in the playoffs because he's just a smaller guard, and opposing coaches will just know how to isolate that matchup. I'm just not as confident in them when it comes to playoff basketball. I'm glad they're playing great in the regular season, but I can just see that offense really being a stain on them once it gets to the playoffs, once it gets to those closing moments. When you got guys like Jokic on the other side where you know they're going to get good offense, even like, you know, a Kawhi Leonard-led team is going to get good offense down the stretch, good shots down the stretch. Even if, like, you know, a Phoenix Suns, like they got guys, multiple guys that they can go to, they can run action through down the stretch. I just don't see that with Minnesota at all, even as they have good offensive talent, but their offense is not being what you would like it to be in the regular season is already kind of concerning enough for me.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. I'll let you respond to that, Gabe. But
yeah, I mean, you do make a lot of good points there. So I mean, it's not like they're going to be a perfect team. I do think what's kind of going in their favor is that one, they're a pretty efficient team. Like they're sixth in terms of field goal percentage, fourth in terms of 3-point percentage. So like even if their offense isn't the greatest in the world, it is an overall pretty efficient offense. And that's even with like Cat kind of had some struggles throughout the early parts of the season, and he's been a little up and down. But outside of that, like I think there's potential there. Like we know the effectiveness of the Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert pick and roll over time. We know what Anthony Edwards can do just as far as being so explosive in the playoffs. I think the biggest thing to account for is just with Cat, like you mentioned, that two-man game should be something they should implement more. But we've seen Cat literally be like a 25% three-point shooter in the postseason multiple times. So, I mean, that's the one thing that I really can't give you an argument against, besides the fact that it makes him less of an overall liability because the defense is better. And as far as exposing the Rudy Gobert defense, though, that's something I'm like reiterating with. They have other guys that can defend. So I just don't think it's the same situation as the Jazz. I think it's a completely different situation. And the fact that he's not surrounded by a bunch of guys who can't guard, but instead he's surrounded by Jaden McDaniels. Anthony Edwards can go on that end. Mike Conley is a bit of a smaller guard, but I think they could – I don't want to say they should run lineups that don't include him because I think his value as a ball handler is a little bit too important. But I do think there's enough there on the defensive side that I don't think it'll fall apart in the postseason.
Yeah, that might have been lazy by me saying that about Rudy, but it's not so much about the defense falling apart. I just don't know if that can be their ultimate backbone come playoff time. Not when you're going against that firepower that's out there in the West. And
I mean, hanging your hat on defense is never a bad idea, though. You think
it's not a bad thing, man. But being just not a great offense, and especially when you get to the postseason, it's setting yourself up for a disaster, in my opinion.
It's becoming worse. Like you could get away with being an elite defense and an okay offense more so 10 years ago than you could today. And Denver started to break that trend last year. Not that they were a terrible defense, and they turned it up a little bit at times in the playoffs. But historically, for most of the last 20, 25 years, you were a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, and you had a top 10 player on your team. And that's what made you a contender. Denver broke that last year. They had the top 10 player, and they were a top 10 offense. They were 17th in defensive rating last year. Now, Minnesota don't even fit that mold already as it is this year. They're 18th in offense. They don't have a top 10 player according to most, and I wouldn't have them having a top 10 player either. Anthony Edwards is great. Riser in the playoffs. He's not quite that guy yet. Now, I will say in past years, you could get away with this more. Elite defense. I think that holds over in the playoffs. I agree with your point, Gabe. I think Rudy's going to be fine in the postseason. They have those other defensive pieces. The other thing that's going to help now, compared to like the Clippers did years ago where they went small, have a Terrence Mann that Rudy's guarding, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to do that now because for a team like Utah, if you were going to take advantage of that on the offensive end, it meant Rudy was getting the post ups. Now Cat's getting those post ups if you're Minnesota, if they're still both on the floor. That's something that you instantly just go to every time on offense, and teams just should not be able to do that without getting punished. So that whole scenario in of itself is going to be a lot easier to avoid in the first place. But outside of that, it's a lot similar to how you feel, Reek, about the offense. I don't know if I buy it. It's good, but it's not quite good enough without having that superstar that I know can really be that guy in the postseason. If this team has that Kawhi, if this team has that Steph Curry that's proven it, that has done it, that is that confirmed top 10 guy in the league when healthy, great. And Ant's been great in the postseason, but he's not quite there for me yet. A few concerning things as well for me. Turnovers has been really bad for them so far this year. The bottom 5 in the league there. And for as much size and length as they haven't been very good in terms of rebounding either. They're right at the bottom, if not last in the league, in offensive rebounding, and they're bottom half in defensive rebounding. So they are far from winning the turnover battle, and they're far from winning any type of possession battle on most nights. For where they're at on the offensive end, they need all the possessions they can get, and they're not there either, especially for a team that's being led by a veteran point guard and Mike Conley. I'd expect them to be better in that department, especially from a turnover standpoint, and they're just not there. So there's some things to clean up potentially with that. I don't think this team should be the type of personnel that is that high in the turnover battle, and they probably should be a better rebounding team. I mean, any team that's running Naz, that's running Gobert, Cat, even McDaniels, Nikhil, like they should be getting more than the bit over 8 offensive rebounds a game I think they're currently at right now. They should be much better. Yeah, they're at 9.3 right now, which is 27th in the league. So that's the type of areas that I think they could improve in, and just by sheer volume of having more possessions, maybe that helps their offense a little bit and is enough to get them over the hump. But I haven't seen it yet. We're over 30 games in. I'm not exactly giving this team with this much concern, specifically in Cat, from what I've seen in the postseason and this limited amount of postseason success in their surrounding core. They're not getting the benefit of the doubt from me. So potential room for improvement, but I'm not banking on it. They're a pretender as of today.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario for them might be like they have the top 10 defense, and maybe Anthony Edwards takes like a Jimmy Butler type approach where like he's usually like a top 15, top 20 guy probably a lot of times in Jimmy's case throughout the regular season, and then really just turns it up in the playoffs and is like, okay, yeah, this is a top 10 player at this moment in this postseason. If then maybe they have, 2 out of those 3 criteria, and we see that can get you pretty far right now. But I do have to kind of walk it back with you guys a bit as far as like there are some legitimate offensive concerns there. So
stand on business, man.
I have to be reasonable. I'm not gonna sit up here and just
if you do that, then the only team you're seeing as a contender out west is Denver.
Right, and I do think that Minnesota has a better chance than OKC just off the fact that like most of them have been there at least once or twice, whereas like a lot of the guys in OKC have never even seen the playoffs, and it's like it makes me want to be a little bit more confident. And even if they have kind of some suspect track records, I think that they're more well built to like withstand the adversity. And so that's kind of where most of my like difference on it was coming from, is like I think that the veteranship of a lot of Minnesota, from Mike Conley, from Kyle Anderson's been around forever, from like I think that Rudy will be just fine, like we've kind of all agreed on. Like, I think from that perspective, that's a lot going for them. And then just the fact that I've seen Anthony Edwards pop off pretty consistently in the playoffs, I think they really have that going for them. I think it can be like a Jimmy Butler type effect where he elevates to where postseason time, he is a top 10 guy. I think that's really within the realm of possibility. And so I think Garrett said it earlier, like making the Western Conference Finals doesn't mean you're a top 2 team. But I do think no matter what the route to get there is, I think they're a top 2 team in the conference. Like I think I have them as better than the Clippers because of my questions about James Harden, because of my questions about like half of their top 7, and really outside of Zubac, who's like okay, like they're not great at the big position. Whereas I think Minnesota is a lot more well-rounded in the front court, has a lot more going for them. So I do think they're better than the Clippers. I definitely think they're better than Sac because Sabonis is one of their top players. The Lakers are so inconsistent. The Pelicans are still pretty inconsistent, and we've never seen Zion and Brandon Ingram like be playing together in April. So I have no reason to put any stock in them. Out of all these teams, like I definitely think like Minnesota to me is just as good as anybody who's not Denver, and probably better than most of them. Like, yeah, they have
you're a contender to you then.
They have their they have their questions, but I think everybody has their questions. Like you say like, oh yeah, like we've seen Cat kind of not perform in the playoffs, but we've also seen Kawhi never be healthy in the playoffs. So it's like if I'm going on based on what I'm seeing right now and the playoffs is starting tomorrow, well, I'm seeing Cat play pretty good right now and playing pretty good this season. And so if I'm predicting the playoffs, like you guys said with the Clippers, I'm going to predict based off of that. Just like if we're predicting based off Kawhi, we've seen Kawhi play almost every game this season, and we're going to go into the playoffs and assume that he's going to be healthy. Well, he's never healthy in the playoffs, but we're assuming he is. So, yeah, Cat, I've seen him underperform in the playoffs sometimes, but he's playing good right now, so I'm assuming that he's going to play good in the playoffs. I feel like that's literally the exact same thing. And you could say one is play and one is health, but they're both a variable that significantly affects the player that we're assuming isn't going to affect them.
You were the one that brought up playoff blunders in the first place, by the way.
I brought off playoff blunders with the Clippers, not with the Timberwolves.
Ignored it with the Cat, but brought it up with Paul George, who's not as –
I brought it up with Cat. I brought it up with Cat. I said if he underperforms, he's less of a liability because he's playing better defense.
I still don't think so. I still don't think so. Regular season defense is cute. Show me what that shit look like in the playoffs, man. When you're getting matchup hunted and they're putting you on them islands. They're looking for you. They're putting you in pick and rolls.
I'm just saying, if he really starts playing that trash in the playoffs, just put Naz Reid in. Because Naz Reid can space the floor. He's a real quality player. Like,
the defense will probably be about the same in the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. If he really falls up that hard on offense and the defense is about the same, put him in. That's why I think the beauty of having a guy like Naz Reid there is.
I also think, to my Mike Conley point, I think Nikhil could be pretty effective for them in the playoffs too. So
agreed.
They have a lot of stuff going for them, but I think like everybody outside of Denver has questions, and I think that they scared me the least as far as like things going wrong.
Yeah, Denver doesn't really have.
Well, my predictions would be like if the Timberwolves were the 1 seed facing the 8 seed. Dude, Timberwolves in like probably 5 or 6. The Warriors do not look good.
8 seed right now is Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm taking Minnesota in that series. I think, dude, you're telling me I have 7 games of like – now don't get me wrong, like Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels are not going to stop Devin Booker and KD, but I think they'll do a damn good job. And just the whole Rudy system with, Nikhil and everybody, all the rest of them, like they'll shut down Phoenix's supporting guys easy. And I think that the main 2 guys there and Ant and Jaden McDaniels do a good enough job on KD and Devin Booker. I definitely think Minnesota's coming out of that series.
I don't think it's easy, but I think they get out of it.
Yeah,
but it definitely ain't easy.
No series is easy. I mean, looking at the whole top 10 seeds in the West. Like, you could argue Houston might be easy, but Dallas ain't easy. Luka's never gone down easy. Luka's been like by himself and taking the Clippers like 6 or 7.
If we look
I don't think the Pelicans are easy either. Like the Pelicans had nobody. The Pelicans had no Zion, and they took the literally like 60-win Phoenix team to 6.
I think Denver runs through the Pelicans in the playoffs.
I agree. I think Denver takes that series in like 4 or 5.
I'll give them 5.
But that's to say that like that's because we have Denver as above everybody. But like, I think the Pelicans give anybody else a good run.
Okay, I knew Utah had been playing better. I did not know they were only 4 games under 500.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they've been playing a lot better.
Memphis is not getting into the postseason. I'm sorry. Like they've been better too, but they're in such a hole. Still 12 games below 500. Getting closer.
They're 5.5 under the play-in.
Yeah, they got a chance.
Last time we talked, they were 6.5 under. So
there's just a lot of teams to pass up. If we assume Golden State gets Draymond back and that makes their defense better again, Los Angeles gets off of their like losing skid. Houston still being above 500, man. They just keep pushing along. I respect
Houston's just decent, man. I fuck with them, man.
I respect it so much.
Yeah, they're a decent basketball team. I'll give them that.
But yeah, Minnesota I think comes out of the first round almost no matter who they play. To me,
yeah. Considering how the bottom looks right now, any of those 4 teams in the play-in range, and even the 2 teams above that, New Orleans and Sac, I could agree with that.
Yeah, I think the only way that they get tough luck is if there's some tough injury luck, like if the Clippers pick up an injury or two but are healthy come the playoffs and slip down into the play-in, that becomes a bit more dicey. I think the Kings give them a better series than most of the teams that are down there right now. I still don't know that I'd favor them to win it, but I think they give them a lot better run than a couple of the other teams down there. Their defense is better than it was last year. At least it's there. Give them a little bit more credit in the playoffs.
I'm sorry. Who did you just say? I kind of zoned out.
That was the Kings I was referring to.
Kings. Okay. Yeah.
Kings are not a contender to me. I do think I'm taking OKC as a contender before the Clippers as like my top 3. I think I definitely got the Clippers as like a 4th.
I like the Kings. I think the
Kings. Maybe I'm hating.
The Kings are like they're like a move away from like jumping a tier. I think like they're kind of close. I think, but they're just still missing.
Yeah, they're trading Sabonis away from going up a tier. Like I can't. The Monte Sabonis cannot be one of your premier players. If he's a premier player on the team, you're not a contender. I'm sorry.
Know if it's just Sabonis, man.
I don't think it's Sabonis that's the issue. It's like all due respect to De'Aaron Fox. Is he the guy on a contending team? I don't know if he is.
Not.
I know we just talked about him as the 6th, 7th guy in MVP voting earlier, but I don't think he's that guy. So like. You probably move off of Sabonis to get that guy, but like, how do you do that? That's pretty darn like. It's a very tough ask.
I'm gonna ask a stupid question.
It's very tough.
Let me ask a stupid question. It might be a stupid question. You guys might have a more like a different. I think I know what you guys are gonna say. Is De'Aaron Fox closer to Shea or is he closer to Jalen Brunson?
Shea.
Oh,
without a doubt to me.
Okay. And I think that's a little bit closer to him being an actual guy on a contender than you guys are giving him credit for.
I agree. He's not far off.
Jalen Brunson's like star player, not your guy on a franchise team. But like Shea is. You guys have like Devin, you had OKC as a contender.
100%.
So that means De'Aaron Fox ain't that far off from being that.
He's not. But I think this is peak De'Aaron Fox. And he's close but not quite there.
That's fair.
Not to mention the fact that his number 2 is like not very great comparatively. If he has a true 1B, maybe there's an argument because then you're like 2 borderline top 10, top 15 guys. But I mean, Sabonis is, as we know, especially in the playoffs, not in that conversation.
Let me say this: I think the team would have to be built like to utter perfection for De'Aaron Fox to be the guy on the championship team. And that's not a knock on him because the dude's elite. But I just think it would take like some really great team building for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, even like Garrett's saying in chat, like Fox was playing really good in the playoffs, but there's a lot of guys who played really good in the playoffs. Like Donovan Mitchell's had crazy playoff series. Like we've seen Anthony Edwards, John Morant have crazy playoff series, and they end in losses.
I think
Luka,
De'Aaron would be a
besides the 1
great.
year, like they have a lot, like they pop off in the playoffs individually and they have great stats, but like it still does not take a team to like a conference finals or a finals. Luka's done it once, but there's a lot of guys who are like that.
I think I think. Well, this is to my point. I think De'Aaron, Brunson, even Dame to a different extent. I think those guys would be like ideal second guys to like a star front court player, like how Kyrie was to LeBron.
Yeah.
I feel like those are those guys' role. Like, may not be the best player, but you were the second best player on the championship team.
Well, rings you go through front court guys, I feel like, just generally. It's that
People
whole
were-
conversation about what
people
Becky
were trying to
Hammond was
kill-
saying the other
They were
day.
trying to kill Becky Hammond. I'm like, she's kind of right. She's not
That's
lying.
the way it is.
No,
Like 10
championships
of,
always.
10 of the last 14 finals MVPs are wings. Like,
That's why I like
the way it's been.
do the same thing I was saying. Like when I say like guys like De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, John Morant, Luka have crazy playoff series, but the team doesn't go far. I'm not saying like they're not that level of player. They're like some of the best guards in the league. It's just when your team is built around one of the best guards in the league, unless that guard is Steph Curry, who's one of the best guards ever.
But that's also an anomaly. Like, and Steph's team built around him,
Yeah.
the perfect team for him.
Yeah,
Everyone.
that was like a team built perfect. And so, yeah, like a team built around a guard, like if you're saying like De'Aaron Fox can't be the franchise guard to take you all the way, who is? What franchise guard to take you all the way? There's been like 3 in history. There's been like literally like 3 like ever.
Like Dev
Right.
said, they would have to go get their guy, and to get their guy with De'Aaron being on the team, they would have to trade some bonus. But even then, how would that work? Who knows? Maybe if they drafted good.
If
then
Fox
they would
does that
already
again,
have
they'll
guy.
win at least one series. Well, right now they would match up against the Clippers, who you guys have as a real contender. So that tells me a lot about the criteria if that's the case with De'Aaron Fox.
I think Sack could give them a run though. But
Oh, it'd be a great series. But
yeah,
if the
I
Clippers
think
are healthy,
anybody
they're
they
winning.
play,
But yeah,
they play, great series.
no one is beating them easily for sure.
Sack versus the Clippers, yeah, that's. I think all the West first round series will be pretty good, except for Denver versus New Orleans. I think that's over quick, but I think because of Luka, OKC versus Dallas, fun series.
I think
Sack
that's a great
Clippers,
series.
fun series. Minnesota Phoenix, like I said, I think Minnesota definitely takes it in like 6, but because it's KD and Devin Booker, fun series.
Yeah, that would be. There's gonna be a lot. There would be a lot of pressure on Minnesota in that series, boy. A lot of pressure. Lakers would be out of the dance. Warriors would be out of the dance. Let me see Houston in the playoff series, man. I'm bought in. I want to see those guys match up
Bought
with somebody in
in
the
on it.
playoffs.
That would be fun. Okay. We have been talking about this for a while though. Since we got 2 more, I think we should move to the East because I think I have one more. Actually, both of my East ones might be a bit controversial because I still have Philly as a pretender.
You got Philly as a pretender.
I do. And I'm gonna give you a couple things. One,
I think we're just disagreeing all day, Gabe. I'm gonna be honest.
Embiid has been dominant in the regular season for years, but he always has some nagging something come postseason time. And I can't. I've seen it for years. I've literally been seeing the same thing since 2018-19. It's 2024. It's 20, bro, we were only halfway through the Trump administration, and now Biden is about to go for re-election this year, and Embiid has been doing the same thing the whole time. The second round, it's 2 different coaches. He's been doing this since Brett Brown was the coach, bro. And the 3 different eras. I can't trust an Embiid-led team to be a real contender to go to the finals until I see differently. They've never even been to the conference finals, and I'm supposed to. Yeah, you said earlier, would I be surprised if they go to the finals? Yeah, absolutely, because they've never even won 2 playoff series, let alone 3. And Maxi's been great. They had Maxi last year, and Maxi played great in the playoffs last year. But Boston's even better than they were last year. Boston looks even better. I think Milwaukee, they've turned it up. I'm not going to say they look better than they ever have because they've won a championship already, but they look damn good. Like, yeah, I would be surprised if Philly were able to get through either of them. I would be genuinely surprised because it's just the history of what I've seen. Like, it's the same thing I was saying with the Clippers. If I see you do the same thing for 5 years, I'm not going to all of a sudden say, oh, yeah, this is going to be the year they do it. I just don't think they have the firepower. Like, it's a solid team. Embiid is great, even if he's only like 70% of himself in the postseason. Tyrese Maxey is great. He plays really good in the postseason. But like Tobias Harris, he's just always Tobias Harris. He's not going to get better. Sorry. Still a little sick, but yeah, like Tobias Harris, he's just always steady. He doesn't rise in the playoffs. He doesn't really fall. He's just him. The rest of their team, I don't think anybody's really a super big like playoff riser. I don't think there's anything special there. Like, they're a real solid team, a good team, and Embiid putting up these crazy stat lines makes them good. But I just don't think they're doing it. I'll let you guys go. So I get my voice back. I was sick, but I'll let y'all go.
Bro's over there dying, man. Oh my god.
He's sticking it out.
This is why I canceled. Yeah, this is why I canceled. This is why there was no pod last week, by the way. This would have been way worse.
You know, to Garrett's point in chat, it's like, are they beating the Celtics or Bucks? I don't know, man. Philly's a tough team because it's hard to not rule out their history. Like that's what Gabe just did right there. He said, look, their history is they always regress when it comes to postseason basketball. And yeah, that's true. It is true. Yeah, they've had some bad runs, and Embiid always seems to catch a nagging injury in the playoffs, whether it's his face getting fractured or whatever it was last year was like a tailbone. It's some just weird injuries. Just keeps picking up injuries, right? I don't know. I feel like I'm just willing to give them new coach, Nick Nurse. I like their supporting cast more than I have in the past. But there are questions. I would probably lean contender for them because Embiid is still so good. And Nick Nurse being there, I think, makes a difference. Everybody knows how I feel about Doc Rivers once it comes to postseason basketball. That's why it was hard for me to take them serious the last couple seasons. I like Nick Nurse more than Doc Rivers. I think he's woken up this team a little more. I think this new voice, his style, has kind of spoke to them a little more. Maxey being now the second guy, the perimeter guy for this team, it's going to be interesting in the playoffs. Let's see if he can keep up this pace. It's questions, but like we said out west, I mean, a lot of teams have questions outside of the teams that we know for sure are contenders. So Philly got their questions, but I'm gonna just lean. I'm gonna give them this one more chance, man. This is their last chance for me, but I'm gonna say contenders.
That's about where I'm at too. They're just on the fringe for me. They're a dark horse contender right now, and if Milwaukee's defense continues to become a little bit better and a little bit more consistent, Philly become not contenders. And the reason I say that is because right now, and where Milwaukee's defense is, I think Philly can beat Milwaukee. Boston are the clear favorites to me, but Boston haven't shown me quite enough to say that definitively I am 100% confident they will beat anyone.
I agree.
So if Philly can beat Milwaukee, I have to put them in the conversation. And I think they're on an even playing field right now. Joel's playing like one of the best players in the league again this year. And of course, the history is there, and that's the problematic part. But it hasn't been these Kawhi type injuries where he's out for 4, 6, 8, 10 months. It's just been nagging, unlucky injuries for a large part of them, which makes me a little bit more tempted to believe that, okay, maybe he'll be able to stay healthy this time. I guess, especially some of these, they're not even necessarily wear and tear injuries. It's just fluke luck that he gets a facial injury or whatever it may be. Like, some of them are a bit wear and tear, but some of them have just been fluky. So the fact that Embiid's been as good as he is, Maxey's a legit number 2 option. They're a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. Oubre's there as good depth, which is a great add this year. Melton's still doing his thing. The Batum addition from the Harden trade's been looking very nice. I like enough of what they have right now. Some of their depth when they get past Melton off the bench isn't ideal, but Beverly's still fine. Like, I think they have enough that they'll be okay. Revisit this in a month's time. If Milwaukee look like a top 10 defense, they're probably not in the conversation. But until then, I think by default, I believe they can beat Milwaukee. And I don't think Boston are then at that point the only team that can possibly come out of the conference. I don't feel comfortable saying they're the clear and only favorite. So by default to that, I think Philly are in the conversation because they've been so good that they can challenge Milwaukee. But that's subject to change, and Boston and or Milwaukee can change that equation just by them being purely better than Philly, which is certainly part of the equation because they are comfortably the two potential teams that have the opportunity to rise and become the clear-cut favorites out east.
Pretty good, Gabe.
Yeah, man, I got some water. I hydrated. I rejuvenated myself. I just, I think there's a certain, threshold for contenders. And honestly, when you say, if dark horse contenders are a part of that, I think that does, expand it where it's yeah, I'd be a little shocked if they made it, but I think they do, have that potential. Philly, has the potential. It's just with me, trying not to overthink it too much. I'm I've seen this a lot. The roster ain't that different. It's hard for me to say that they're going to take that extra step. Now, the coaching change is probably the biggest thing. And just Maxey being a playoff riser is their premier guy versus James Harden being their premier perimeter guy, being a playoff dropper. So, there is the potential there. Still just not great. A lot of questions because of history. Same thing with the Clippers. A lot of it's just history. When they do the same thing so long, I have a hard time saying, yeah, this is the year that it changes.
Maxey's definitely an interesting part, man. If he consistently can elevate in the playoffs, that makes them different, a little more scary. But it's different being the guy. It's different, man. Because if you play bad, you're gonna hear about it, for sure. Before, when you were having 8-point games in the Celtics series and getting picked on defensively, people weren't really paying attention because they were more worried about Harden being unaggressive and then Embiid not taking any shots in the final 4 minutes of a closeout game. They weren't worried about Maxey getting picked on and being not really scoring the ball offensively. But now you're showing you're an all-star caliber guy. There's going to be a lot more eyes on you, and you're going to be expected to not only perform but elevate. So questions, I don't have any doubts that he can do it. It's just, we definitely have to see it, though, for it to be a true thing. But that's a wild card for them. But I think the main thing for them, basketball-wise, you mentioned it, Dev, was their depth is way better than what it was last year because they were playing – McDaniels was supposed to be one of their guys off the bench. He didn't play good for them. George Niang was getting a lot of big minutes in the playoffs for them. Look, Nick Batum's old, but he's solid. He provides a lot of great stuff for them. Covington has had a little bit of a resurgence with them. Even Marcus Morris has played decent for them. I trust their wing depth off that bench a lot more than I did last season, which is very, very important for them.
Yeah, as a Raptors fan, I can tell you Jalen McDaniels is just not good.
He had a good game against the Celtics the other night before the trade. But yeah,
that might be his first good game of the year.
It might be because I was looking. They were leaving him open, but he was knocking down some shots in the fourth quarter. I'm like,
yeah, they were right to leave him open. They were right to do so.
I'm this is the guy that they were complaining about on the podcast. No way. But the funny part about that game, I didn't even mention it earlier, but Scotty took 15 threes that game.
He's been shooting a lot of them lately.
Took a lot. I'm golly. He was making them, but
it's mediocre spacing, bro. It's mediocre spacing.
That was my thing. I'm he has to take them because it's who else is taking them? Pascal's not taking them.
They all take them. They just all take a couple sometimes.
That motherfucker took 15, bro, and he made 6 or 7. He was knocking them motherfuckers down, but Man, I forgot about Pat Bev. Yeah, they do got Pat Bev. Yeah. See, Philly got some guys. I don't know. I get your point though, Gabe. It's like for them, it's hard to ignore their history, man. It's like, man, like you guys have already shown us who you are, but we just keep believing them, man. It's like going back to that girl that you just know she's not good, but just keep going back.
She gonna cheat again, man.
One more chance.
She's gonna cheat again. Hey,
again.
Like I think I guess I'm just a rolling with history guy. I might have an opposite pick on all 5 of these than Devin. I think we agreed on OKC, but different on the other 3. But
I'm still back and forth with OKC, but
Miami, will we disagree one more time? That's the question.
I'm thinking not, because you're a Jimmy guy, and I'm riding the train this year because, hey, we just talked about history with Philly.
Thank God,
We just talked about history with Philly.
And
I wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying it.
This is our first.
I'm buying it with
Miami. This is our first unanimous. Man.
Bro, this is my consistent criteria. Historically, unless you've had some major change, this is still Miami under Coach Spo, under Jimmy, under Bam. And they're actually kind of better in the regular season. Like, their shooting numbers are a lot closer to what they were last postseason than last regular season. Like, they look pretty dang solid, and I have no reason to think that they're not just going to do it again.
I think they're a better team this year than what they were last year.
And I still think they can beat. I still think they'd probably beat Philly because Philly's prone to choking and Embiid drops and Jimmy rises and I'm sorry, Miami owns them.
The weapon of Coach Spo, man. Like he's a weapon in the playoffs, man. Like matchups, you see this guy for 7 games, he's gonna find something. More likely than not.
Yeah, it's the matchups. They own Philly. They beat Philly all the time. They have like the past 5 years or so. They're pretty split with Boston and Milwaukee in terms of series against each other. No matter what the personnel looks like. Like they went in as the 8 seed versus 1 seed Milwaukee, and there was injuries, but they won. The first year against Milwaukee, they were pretty healthy from what I recall. They won. So it's they beat these teams at the peak of their power despite not having the greatest roster. And I just they're in it. They can do it again, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did it again because they beat Milwaukee twice. They beat Boston. I think they beat Boston twice because they beat them twice. So the fact that they've beaten all the top contenders in this era, they can do it again.
Yeah, it's just too much going for them to not believe in them. I mean, we were all a little bit lower on them again going into the season this year, just like we were last year. And again, they've just made us look wrong. And after their slow start, have really just picked up the pace. And they just continue to find ways to win. It's Spo, it's their player development, it's their scouting. They just knock it out of the park every year. Hawkes is a great pick. Highsmith is still being a solid contributor. Duncan Robinson just is now continuing to become even better. Not just a 3-point shooter anymore, even is getting off the dribble and driving to the rim a little bit and playmaking a little bit off those drives. Like they just continue to find ways, and it just is too much of a reoccurrence year in, year out for the last 4 years now to count these guys out. I just can't do it as long as Jimmy and Bam and Spo are still there. As long as that 3 is there, it's too hard to count them out. The stats outside of the 3-point shooting numbers don't really go for them this year. They're about middle of the pack in offense and defensive rating, but we know they turn it up in the playoffs. We know Jimmy turns it up in the playoffs. We know Spo is a pain to deal with in the playoffs. It's just too much for me to go against them. They're not going to be favorites because Boston and Milwaukee exist. But can I believe that they can play spoiler and try and make a run? I mean, they've done it enough times now that I just have to say yes.
Yeah, I'm sure them defensive numbers are a little hurt by Bam missing a little bit of time too. So
for sure,
they'll be once they get to the playoffs. We know what we're gonna get from them. Hawkes has been amazing. I even seen RJ Hampton's been giving them some decent minutes recently.
Yes,
like you said, they figure it out. They hit it out the park every single year with getting guys, and then when guys leave, sometimes they don't look as good in other situations. I.e., Gabe Vincent doesn't look as great outside of Miami. So they figure it out, and Duncan being back and being better than what he has been before is like another like big time addition for them. Tyler Hero, he missed a lot of time, but when he's been on the court,
Should be back
he's been really
soon,
good.
right?
He's back now. He's back now.
He is. I just checked his game logs. I didn't see any games with him back yet.
He played.
No, I swear I've watched him sometime in the last week.
He definitely played against Golden State when I watched him the other night.
Yeah, he's been back since December 18th.
Bro, why did that not pop?
Bro,
I just didn't
just
scroll
not
down.
watching Heat basketball.
I just didn't
like,
scroll down long enough. Yeah, I haven't caught a Heat game in a minute, but I didn't scroll down enough on his game log.
Well, yeah, he's been back and he's still playing really good basketball too. So, yeah, as long as they got Spo, Jimmy, Bam, contenders in my book.
Yeah, I can't deny it. Can't deny it. They've been too good, but it is quite the what if, Garrett. But didn't happen. So I got to roll with what I'm seeing and what I have seen in the playoffs last year. So.
Yeah, that's why I'm rolling with my takes on Philly and the Clippers. But apparently, we only roll with what we've seen in some cases, and not all of them.
What can I say? I'm an optimist tonight.
Hey, all I'm saying, but I think the Timberwolves are really my only take that didn't really go with history. That's okay, because Anthony Edwards is that guy.
I think Miami's the only team I just went straight off of history with. I'm willing to overlook some things.
That's because we disagreed on almost all of them.
Unintentionally, the game. It's not we didn't have a production meeting.
Nope.
It's all authentic.
There is no forced disagreements on this pod, as anyone who saw our All-Star ballots last year would see, because there was very little disagreements on that one.
Yeah, so just anticlimactic. I think
we got some all-time great debates on this podcast. I feel like it's always me. Y'all had a good one earlier, though. I think the
Timberwolves, or was it OKC? No, Timberwolves, I think.
You know, I'm prone to be the one who's the odd one out, and I feel like I don't see you two up top there get into that many debates, but
I'm trying to think of one that we've had.
You guys must be afraid to get hot with it, man. You guys must be afraid to get hot.
Might be.
I don't know if I can claim that that's the case. I think I got the entire OKC fan base yelling at me for saying Giddey's a problem after he just balled out tonight. So
I seen the video was on some good ass numbers. Like when I watched it at it's like 7:30 and it was already at like 600 something views.
Yeah, it's up over 2K post game now, and I got an entire comment section of OKC fans yelling at me. So that'll be a fun read. That'll be a fun read before I go to bed tonight. That'll be a good.
I bet they probably didn't even watch the video, because most of your points was saying they should probably just bring him off the bench.
Yeah.
Dude, I
baited it for clicks. That's what you got to do, and then you give them the facts in the video, and I get engagement off the comments.
And making it the title, Josh.
Garrett said it, bro. Garrett said it. They're literally they're defending a pedophile, bro. They're defending a groomer. How?
I'm not going to speak on that until everything's out, but sure.
Bro.
I'll say I didn't even think about that part until halfway through. I made the video, and then I was like, this is going to be interesting what my comment section is going to look like, but I'm sticking with the title.
Perfect. The title was perfect.
Josh Giddey probably, yeah.
Title was perfect.
I had to roll with it.
Even in the case of Alligator, I'm erring on the side of safety, bro. I'm not sticking my neck out until he's out the mud, bro. Until he's out the water.
Yeah, but I'm indifferent. I'll talk about his basketball play, but everything else,
I'll leave it at that.
Until it starts affecting his on-court stuff.
So I guess the question is, how many total contenders do we really have?
But Boston, Milwaukee, Denver are the obvious three.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I said
got
Clippers,
3 in the East and 2 in the West. So I guess I have 5 contenders right now.
Heat. I was indifferent on OKC. I would probably more so still lean towards pretenders. And same thing with Timberwolves. So I'm at 6.
Yeah.
Fifth
The
is
Lakers had
at
potential
7.
before that slide. Like I would have put
Lakers are contenders. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I can't benefit of the doubt them, but the way they played at the start of the season, they were looking good.
Yeah.
In-season tournament play, they looked really good.
They did.
But yeah, as far as like being like one tier below contender, it's like I might have more actual contenders in the East, but as far as like some dark horse guys like Clippers, OKC, a lot of Western teams are in there for me. I think more than
I mean,
East
because
teams.
it's like you
Like
look at
outside
like Lakers, Phoenix. It's like if they just turned it on, like somehow, like we wouldn't be surprised because they got the top end talent. But
like Orlando, as fun as they are, Indiana, they're not winning a title. People are talking about the Knicks. They got OG, not winning a title.
who the fuck's talking about the Knicks? I like the Knicks stuff.
No, we're talking about the Knicks because of the trade.
Oh yeah.
And everybody said the consensus was still not a contender.
Yeah.
Cleveland, not a contender.
Yeah, that's probably my main 4 right now to Garrett. I think those are probably the top 4. I think everyone else is a little bit more dark horsey.
That's fair.
Sub the Clippers for the Timberwolves for me, and I'm with you right there.
Bro loves Minnesota.
I'm putting stock in that defense, bro. I cannot put stock in the Clippers until they prove me wrong.
I got stock in the Clippers, man. I got stock.
That's crazy. Dare I say, bro is a Clipper fan? That's wild.
I can pull up the screenshot right now. You in a Kawhi jersey, brother?
I'll put on the
Still on my
Kawhi jersey.
desktop.
I'll put on the Kawhi jersey right now. It's still my rhetoric for the past like 8 months has been so blatantly anti-Clippers. Maybe I'm running. Maybe I'm just simply not accepting.
I'm always a Harden guy, so I will support teams that not support, but I will root for his success.
Never thought I'd see the day that I'm on the opposing side of an argument for the defense first team. Never thought I'd see it.
Man.
Talking about who?
Devin.
Talking about the Timberwolves.
Oh. Did you see the clip of Rick Carlisle saying like even a pretty girl is boring? I don't know why. That just made me think of like, yeah, they probably
So
feels the
funny.
same way.
There was Twitter thread. Somebody was like, dang, that girl really became a 10 once I found out she had great instincts in the pick and roll.
It was like, I seen somebody say like she's a 9, but now she's a 5 because she doesn't have good help defense.
Oh, nah, I saw, she got beat on a backdoor cut. She being lazy. Red flag.
No,
that was just
so
a crazy
funny.
analogy, but I mean, I guess.
Yeah, it's a crazy analogy. I read that to my girl, and she was very confused.
2023 was like the year of quote memes, bro. Like, especially like the last couple of months.
Twitter was
like
going crazy with those.
Halliburton, I'm tired of being a loser. Who is it? Nurkic, that brother needs help. Like, crazy.
Brother needs help. The classic. Get ready to learn Chinese.
that one isn't real. Like that one's
it's
fake,
not, but it's hilarious.
It is great. It's great.
And then all the iterations from it, like I seen one that said, "Get ready to learn Italian." Contending for their 4th time, getting the 7th.
And then Rudy hit the "Tonight I feel like I lost my virginity."
Yeah, that was a good one. I think the Jared Allen one is classic from
Oh yeah, lights was too bright. Right, we expected. Kobe White makes the Bulls contenders in my book. Build with Kobe.
Y'all know about that one, dog. I don't know. Garrett was in Twitter beat today talking about Kobe White's fall off.
I did see that.
He was promoting it.
Hey, we got 3 hours in, and we actually did not talk about the Raptors losing to Detroit basketball. We really didn't get to have our Pistons. We didn't get to have our Pistons trash talk because I was sick last week. It was supposed to. That was supposed to be like the main thing of the episode.
I kid y'all not. I was gonna say in that segment, I'm not talking about them until they win a game. That was just gonna be my talking point.
You know, your prediction actually was wrong. You said wasn't your prediction that they wouldn't win a game for the rest of 2023?
I was off by one day.
They won on like December 30th.
I was off by one day.
They lose one more game, and you're right.
Yeah, it was always going to be against Toronto. It just always was. I knew I should have put money on that game. I was telling everyone for a week and a half before that was going to be the game.
I was telling people in the office, I'm like, when they were getting ready to play the Celtics, I'm like, this would be the most Celtics thing ever, just to lose this game. So don't be
it almost was.
Hey, Porzingis pulled up. That was a hell of a game.
Him and Derek White down the stretch were incredible. Yeah, that was such an entertaining game for many reasons, but it was a fun game.
It was a good game.
I really want to like find a Detroit Wingstop employee. Reek, I need you to go to Wingstop this week, and I need you to ask the first worker you see if they'd like to come on the pod. I can know. I just need to know. I need to know what that night was like.
Do you think it was like them, like when the Popeye chicken sandwiches came out? Had them workers out there gassed.
As somebody who just worked Black Friday in retail, I just need to know if it was the same deal.
Probably was, man. I ain't gonna lie. It probably was bad. I was out of town. If I was in town, I would have got my 5 free wings.
Dude, you said some lemon pepper would be incredible.
Lemon peppers.
Dude, after all this, Detroit's not even that far ahead of San Antonio either. Like, it's crazy that Detroit lost 28 games in a row and still like might not finish the year as the worst team in the NBA.
That's
the Spurs won 2 games in December, so it's not like they were exactly on some hot streak. They won 1 game in November. Like they've also been tragic. Before tonight, Charlotte had only won 1 game in December. They now beat the Kings tonight.
Dude, the Spurs low-key broke the Lakers. Like the Lakers, I feel like that's when they started being ass, was when they lost to the Spurs.
Yes. Did AD miss that game or did he get hurt?
I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. I do remember I watched that game at a bar because I was at Miami, and I was definitely sipping an Angry Orchard watching the Lakers downfall.
I think I was at the gym.
Jackson.
He was at the gym. I was just keeping up. Yeah. Oh, AD rested that game.
Yeah. But yeah, dude, I would love to get. We can have a Spurs segment on here soon, but dude, talking about
what is there to be said, bro? Honestly,
what is there to be said? They literally like hate Wemby, bro. It's crazy.
I'm to the point where just bad teams. Like, I don't know if there's anything to be said. We're 30-something games in.
That's true. I don't have anything to say about like Portland or Washington.
I do. Scoot's been playing good basketball.
Yeah,
not being talked about.
That is true.
Scoot has been good,
like,
but that's
Charlotte. Dude, Charlotte fell off a cliff. Like LaMelo got. The only thing I can say about Charlotte is damn LaMelo was good because they suck.
Yeah, LaMelo was good, and Bridges is somehow worse defensively than he was before.
Dude, Kuzma's crazy too. Kuzma really tweeted, "Don't be that team about Detroit." Like Washington is only 3 games ahead of them, despite them losing 28 games in a row.
That was one of them tweets where you got to think before you hit sand.
They won 3 times the amount of games that Detroit won that month. So,
just not
3 times
much.
better? Question mark.
Shoot,
not saying much.
Maybe
Washington's an interesting team. I feel like they got a couple pieces that they could potentially move. I heard Tyus Jones could be on the block at some
Yeah,
point.
he could be on the block. I
It's
saw
crazy.
something about Kuzma today too, which is bizarre considering they just gave him a bag. But
Toronto's really like the worst team that isn't like dog water. Like there's like the really terrible, like vying for a top 5 pick, and outside of that,
Toronto's watching.
Brooklyn's been
like
pretty bad the last 3 weeks
like
too.
They have.
Memphis is worse from like a record standpoint, but with Ja back, that'll probably change pretty soon. So like the Raptors are
Memphis is like
legitimately the worst team of the rest.
Memphis is like 6-3 since Ja came back, I think.
I think so, because they had that 4-game winning streak. But yeah, no, like Brooklyn are 23rd in defensive rating this year, and we were
That's
expecting them to
shocking.
be quite good defensively. 27th
And it's
over the last few
fucking
weeks.
opposite. Their defense sucks.
It's really bad.
I guess
bad.
Ben
Not
being
at all
out
what I
maximum
expected.
time doesn't help, but
Yeah,
still.
shouldn't be bad. It should at least be average, and it's been bad.
Poor Jock Bond, man.
And they got destroyed tonight. That's a rough one.
Who'd they play tonight?
They played the Pelicans. They lost 112-85.
I saw some meme about like Jacques Vaughn being in love with Spencer Dinwiddie. I'm like, that's such a random player. To be in that with. Like,
Oh, well, Cam
Why is
Thomas
Cam Thomas
was
back coming off
over
the
11
bench?
tonight, so that would do it. But yeah, I don't know why he's coming off the bench.
Do y'all
Makes
think
me
Mikal could get moved this year? Like, if you had to scale 1 to 10, how likely?
I mean, the way he's playing this year compared to last year, I think his value is going to be higher now than it's probably ever going to be in Brooklyn. So I think there's a pretty good chance. Probably not getting any better to have his value get raised based on them winning.
It depends on who's buying. Like the Knicks
Sure,
just
there's a lot
bought
of teams that
forward.
be interested.
Yeah, but who'd be interested that can actually pull it off?
Okay, so you could do it.
Pacers could do it.
Memphis,
Oh, that's good.
Memphis might have an avenue to do it. Pacers.
Man, maybe the Pacers could do it if he wasn't relying on a reputation on defense, man. I don't know.
I'm not saying they would want to do it, but Pelicans definitely have assets to pull something like that off.
Yeah.
I would think.
I'm interested in New Orleans. They're like good, but nobody really talks about it. They're like just good enough, but I don't know. They always compete in the playoffs, so like I'm kind of curious.
They've been in the playoffs one time.
They compete. They competed. That's always.
Okay, that's true. You got me there. That's facts.
Yeah. Mikal and the Kings would be fun, but they'd probably want Keegan Murray, and that's just not happening. I don't think.
We'll give you Harrison Barnes, Davion Mitchell, and two picks.
Yeah, they can get Barnes, then that'd be nice. But
Barnes, Mitchell, 2 picks. And then Harrison Barnes should get bought out and signed with a contender. Yep. Just kidding. I forgot about the second apron rule. A lot of teams aren't even.
yeah, there's a few teams that would not be all the dibs that.
See, yeah, that's the type of player that I'm thinking. Like, if you build a team with De'Aaron being your best guy, I feel like Mikal Bridges has to be on that team.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like then if you have Mikal, Keegan Murray's a good piece for it. Herter and Monk are fine for it, but Sabonis is probably not the guy for it.
Got to upgrade Sabonis.
Yeah. And I don't even. Yeah, you probably do need to upgrade at that point. Mikal probably has to be a number 3. I don't know who the guy is, but
What kind of bigs would be out there?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know who that is. Like the ideal, like I mean, it's obviously he's ideal everywhere, but the ideal guy is Chet. But obviously, you're not getting him.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the ideal mold. I don't know if anyone really exists there that would fit what they need. Because they could get a decent defensive guy who can space a bit, but they probably need a little bit more offensive production than like a Brook Lopez or a Miles Turner type guy. They probably need more than a 14, 15 point a game guy.
Facts. There's just not a lot of dudes like that out there.
It's not. The dudes that are MVP candidates.
Jaren Jackson came to mind, but he wouldn't be available. But somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Cat wouldn't move me.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if that guy exists.
Might not. Anthony Davis. Maybe the Lakers. LeBron leaves or something. They just have to
Trade the for Sengun. That is crazy.
Yeah. Sengun can keep getting a
They
little bit better.
Drafted him.
That's also true. If Kristaps was still in Washington, he'd be ideal. That would be the guy.
Sure. That'd be perfect.
You talking about for the Kings?
Yep.
Yes.
We were talking about if they traded for Mikal.
The Kings, as long as they get off Sabonis, bro, that guy's he's never going anywhere in the playoffs.
He really hates Sabonis, man.
I can't. It's just so she's just so blatantly like terrible.
For you to talk about him as a playoff stinker, but barely mention Cat is peak Gabe. Peak Gabe right there, man.
Hey, at least I was consistent with my criteria for contenders tonight, sir.
Well, I was consistent too.
Okay. All right.
Except with Miami. I let their past convince me. Rick. Yeah, I do agree with Sabonis though. Like he just doesn't do anything great enough when it comes to being a top guy on a team in the playoffs.
I mean, he's going to be relied upon as like a main big.
I wish he could
just ain't got
space.
no more.
If he could space like consistently, that would be nice, but he just doesn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even Sabonis, like at his best, I feel like is not going to be that effective in a postseason environment. Whereas Cat more so is just like stops being able to shoot for some reason. But like if Cat's style of play works, he just doesn't really live up to it. I don't think that Sabonis' style of play works, even if he were to play well in the playoffs.
Well, and the thing is, too, even if Cat can't hit a three in the playoffs, at least he's still giving you spacing. Sabonis is hitting a three in the playoffs. They're going to keep letting him shoot it. You ain't getting anything out of that. So, like, it's by default, it's just so much harder to orchestrate a postseason offense around it.
He's not even a great mid-range shooter. Like,
no, he's not.
Just bully ball, and that just doesn't work in the postseason, man. You don't get the calls.
No, it really
it's inefficient. The floor is going to get shrunk.
You don't get the calls in the playoffs, man. The I don't know that I'm thinking about it, bro. The OKC Thunder. Shay's not gonna get them calls in the playoffs, man. I don't know.
How many free throws did Shay take a game? Like 8?
Yeah, no, that's a fake narrative. That's a fake narrative.
It's funny because Embiid still shoots like 8 to 10 free throws a game in the playoffs. Like, Giannis still shoots like 8 to 10 free throws a game.
Yeah, Shea is at 8.4 this year.
Embiid just has such just like bad stretches. Like I feel like Embiid will straight just have a playoff half where he has like 1 point. And it'll be a second half. Yeah, and it's like, where did you go?
Yeah, Jokic does a good job, like dialing it up, aggressive-wise, offensively in the playoffs. Like he'll just have games where he's taking 35 shots if he has to.
That is very Jokic. Yeah, he'll have one game where he takes like 8 shots, and then the next game he'll take like a gazillion.
They don't really do that in the playoffs, though. Like playoffs, he's pretty much ramping it up every game.
Like I don't like consistent aggression is just. I feel like if you're if you're a good enough player, is really nice to have. Like I wish that Scotty Barnes had more of that, bro. Like there's some games where he's taking like 7 shots, and I'm like, what are we doing? And it's usually the games where Pascal's taking a bunch of shots, but
yeah, I think that's what it is, man.
Yeah, and it'll probably be even more so that now just for the next little bit while you try and get RJ and quickly incorporate it into the offense, try to figure out the flow and get the chemistry going a bit more. Take a bit of time.
That's facts.
Well, in the interest of time and me not sleeping through my alarms in the morning, I should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, not everybody can be off work anymore.
hey, You know, I battled through sickness to make this pod.
Bro couldn't even give us a flu game last week.
If I would have came on the pod last week, I genuinely think I would have given you the worst basketball analysis of all time.
Nah, you just probably would have been on mute half the time, coughing.
Yeah. I would have had a roll of toilet paper. You would have seen me like mute and then grab a tissue and be like on camera and everything. It would have been nasty. And you would not have loved it.
It would have been nasty, and we would not have loved it. Would have not been one of those love it scenarios. But nonetheless, we're glad to be back this week. Glad you could make it. Thanks to everyone that did tune in and tuned into the stream tonight and showed your support. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that like button down below and do subscribe. Until then, hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.